Let's get ready to RPG!
RPG! RPG! RPG! RPG!
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Knights of Last Call. My name is Derek Melinda. I am the Game Master and the host for the Knights of Last Call. But our members are growing. We're going to have some new folks on for our Root campaign, and we're really excited about all that. Of course, Smith and Bob will be there as well, some of our older guests from some of our previous shows. But yeah, we're looking forward to the future, a future provided to us thanks to the everlasting and eternally appreciated support from our patrons. 300 strong, which was a huge milestone for us, and very, very pleased and very honored to reach that level. And, you know, we just did a massive survey for our patrons. We did one last year. We did this one, now this one this year. And results are still coming in. You know, we've only maybe gotten about 100 results or so, which is actually pretty good for 300 people. And overall, you know, people are very happy and pleased with the content that they're, you know, getting from this channel, and they're really happy about the support. Or rather, they're really happy about supporting the channel, and that's just all incredible, wonderful news. And it's been a really good week, very positive week. Long week, very long week. I had 2 doctor's appointments today. One for my foot, and well, the other one was a dental hygienist cleaning. Not really a thing. Although I did talk to my dentist about maybe getting some Invisalign, you know, braces. See, my teeth, they're not very straight. So I've been thinking about doing it for a long time, but you know, maybe I will. Anyways. Not long busy, not long crappy. I mean, the fact that, I mean, again, this is going to sound like the ultimate bitch and win, but, you know, I'm leaving Sunday really early. I have a 5 a.m. flight down to Florida for my mom and I. We're going on a cruise. Every year I take my mom for a cruise. I kind of just Mother's Day, Christmas, her birthday, just one all in one. And I just get us a cruise, and it's a fun time. And I get to spend some time with my mom one-on-one, and she loves it. And it's a great way for me to just, you know, never have to think about what I'm actually going to get her, because it's so nice that I just set up everything. Anyways, so I got a lot of stuff I need to do before I even leave. So that's what's making it so long and busy. But yeah, but a lot of the things that we're busy with, of course, is Knights of Last Call. Bob and Aaron are heads down working on Northern Reaches Season 2. We just did a sort of friends and family preview release to some of our most active players from last season. And I know that they had a lot of feedback and a lot of great ideas and a lot of questions and comments and concerns and clarifications. And I know that Aaron is taking all of those and diligently getting everything done. Bob and him are working up some world lore documents for the release, especially for new people. So it's going to be really, really exciting. Who do we got in here tonight? We got a lot of people. We got some of my favorite people. We've got Marvelous Mr. Mean saying hello to everybody. Hello, Marvelous Mr. Mean. We got KC. What's up? What's up, KC? Gid is here, wishing everyone a happy good morning from the other side of the world. Good to see you as well. Labib Sod is here. Welcome, Labib Squad, as well as Pimp Biscuit, who is back for the look at the books. Well, we got plenty of them for us tonight. Frosty is here, wondering who someone is being called a gentleman. Frosty is a true gentleman and master of the rope saber, as we've come to learn. Claude is here. Welcome, Claude. First time catching one live from the beginning. Well, welcome to the stream. Glad to have you. I was complaining about being tired. Gid says that they are here for me. Thank you so much. Rick Sherman is here, still at work. Ooh, yikes. It's a long day, buddy. It's a long day. I should pitch my Discord. Yeah, so I don't know why, but maybe I missed something. The Knights of Last Call Discord, where so many of these people, you know, come in from, is part of our Patreon benefits. Even our lowest tier gets access to our Discord, but our Discord is not public. It is private. And I think everybody who's been a big part of our community would agree that is for the best. It keeps all of the trolls and the riffraff and the crazy, you know, people who just want to come in there and disrupt things from making too big of a stink. And also, too, I mean, nobody wants to pay, you know, $5 or $10 a month and then go be a jerk and then just get kicked out and not get anything for it. So, I mean, not that I'm saying that people would be a jerk, but, you know, having a little skin in the game helps keep everybody in line. I think you can trust the group, the community a little bit better. Again, we kind of lean a little bit older in our demographics, just because, you know, those are the kind of, typically young people don't necessarily have a lot of money to just throw around on something like a Discord. Although we do have some people in there, and I appreciate them. But, you know, it's a fun environment, and everybody kind of, you know, we're like family, you know, we kind of rib each other. We kind of give each other some shit from time to time. But at the end of the day, you know, we're all there to play, to learn, and to grow. So that's the Nice Last Call Discord. All right. Damn kids, keep off my lawn. We actually did have somebody who was like, oh yeah, I joined Derek's Patreon. They joined, or Night's Last Call. They said that because they saw us on Roll for Combat, where I deliberately said, don't check us out, you won't like us. And they were like, I was so intrigued by that pitch, which was not a pitch, that I had to go check you guys out. So that was pretty crazy. Frosty says, tip goal, make Derek's teeth great again. Yeah. Well, my teeth were never really that great. I probably should have had braces when I was a kid, but, you know, luckily I have, oh, hey, it's Zach. That was me. That's Zach. That's like one of my favorite, new patron, like, why'd you join the Patreon things ever? Everyone was like, this person should definitely be in our Patreon. If they're like, oh man, this guy doesn't want me here. All right, I'll join. It's fantastic. So yeah, so tonight we're going to be diving back into the books. I've started to put the ones that we have reviewed up on the shelf. So we're going to start slowly but surely filling in the shelf. Don't worry, we still got plenty to go. As a reminder, we got 2 tip goals down there tonight. Well, the tip goal was $1, so that got reached immediately. But at the end of this stream, there's a goal for super chats. That's what you do through YouTube. And then there's also a goal through our Stream Elements tip. There's a link to that in the description below this video, where you can go to our Stream Elements page and give us a tip that way. The reason why we do that, I know it's kind of a pain in the ass, is just because that way YouTube doesn't get as much money from us. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. Stream Elements is a lot nicer. Anyways, whichever one of those tip goals is higher at the end of the stream is going to determine whether or not I go on this vacation and just enjoy myself. And, you know, I'm sure I'll chime in on the Discord and maybe post some fun pics or little quick videos or shorts. But for the most part, I'm just going to go dark for a few days as I kind of enjoy my vacation. Or, you know me, I love to talk. I love to talk to you all. So it's not like it's like a horrible thing. But if you want to see me work and you just can't bear the thought of going that long without me, well, then that's what the tip goal's for. If you want a Stream Elements tip, we'll try to stream from the sea. I can't promise you that the quality will be very good because, you know, we're going to be over that middle of the ocean internet, but we'll try to do something, right? GM Scott, are you at least putting them back on the shelf with any kind of organization? No. Because I'm not doing them in any sort of organization. GM Scott, what I'll probably do is once I get to about 33% or something like that, I'll probably have enough books up there that I can start to sort of make sections and segments and stuff like that. So that is the answer to that. Let's get some jazz going, huh? Well, let's start this over here. All right. Well, how about it? So as a reminder, again, thank you to all the support. Currently, right now, we are 1 penny above. Super Chat is 174.01, and 174.0 is our tip. So, and there's a Rick S. tip.
Rick S. Tip $25. Stream from the ship.
Stream from the ship from Rick S. Thank you. Oh no. Thank you, Rick S. for that. Oh, we got Smith's dying wife.
Smith's dying wife tip $10. Cough, cough, any more good for ebooks left? Haha, just kidding. Most for ebooks are good.
Well, there we go. We're off to a quick start as Rick S., who is at work, of all places, tips us $25 because he wants to see more streams from the sea. And who doesn't, right? Plus, how ridiculous and dumb is that? Nothing says nice to last call being stupid, like, you know, streaming from the middle of the ocean. Throw some bad books overboard. I would tip to see that. You know, I bet if I got caught doing that, I would get in serious trouble. There'd probably be some like violation of some like ocean, you know, littering law or something like that. That being said, I don't want to litter in the ocean, but I would totally do that. I would totally do that.
Claude Corp tip $3.
Thanks,
I know
Claude.
you can't have all of all the games, but I'd really like to know your thoughts regarding City of Mist. I ask because Bit seems to have all the love, but what about that little cousin? Smile.
Yeah, City of Mist is a game which I've leafed through, but I haven't really put a lot of time into learning, Claude. But I do think the idea of it's interesting. Again, like you said, it's kind of in its own sort of space, in its own kind of world. We actually have some people on our Discord who are really interested in it. I think Unfortunate Pumpkin is really, really big City of Mist fan. I think they're like bought everything, every book on it. And I do think it's an interesting premise. It's a little weird for me. I mean, I like some weird RPGs, but City of Mist is a little kind of strange sometimes. But, you know, I think that the rules implementation of it's really, really cool. It's probably one of those books that I'd like to do like a better read through before I kind of give a more official thing. Obviously, I haven't had a chance to play it at all, but I've only skimmed through the PDF. I haven't really, dug into it. So, right. You'd have to fly down to some, I'll be in Haiti. I'll be off the coast of Haiti. So you have to fly down to Haiti and then you have to bail me out. So yeah, that would be where it'd be. Oh no, there it goes. All right, well, let's get into it, shall we? Let's go over here. Boom. All right. I would love that. That would be fantastic, Frosty. After all books ranked, are you doing all PDFs ranked? That's sick. I don't think so. Although, you know what? Maybe as a final part of this stream, we'll just go through my PDF stuff. Oh, that would take forever. I probably have as many PDFs at this point as I do books. Maybe not. I probably still have more. Yeah, we can get my mom on the stream. I'm sure she wouldn't mind. We'll see. But you've really intrigued me with this throwing the bad book overlord. But now I'm just imagining a tip goal where it's like I've got like Pathfinder 2 core rulebook, like D&D Player's Handbook core rulebook, and I don't know, like Blades in the Dark or something, or Dungeon World. And I'm like, tip for your favorite: the losers go into the water. That would be awesome. Knowing you all, they'd like pay for the cruise. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and get started here. Up first, Dread. Probably the most evocative and weird and interesting RPG that ever got made. Dread is, of course, very famous at this point in the RPG world for being the RPG that you play with a Jenga tower. It's a very small book. It doesn't really have character sheets. It's really designed for one-shots, although I suppose you could maybe do like a 2-shot or a 3-shot. The rules of the game are pretty simple. The GM, or before they begin, kind of constructs an idea of a scenario, and then they make a series of questionnaires. Each questionnaire has 10 questions, really 9, because the last question is always, what is your name? And they hand these questionnaires to the players, sometimes before the session. That's ideal. And the questions are always very spooky and kind of leading, where, it's kind of like, why won't you put anything metal in your mouth ever again? And like, the questions are sort of designed to sort of entice you to think of some fucked up answer, right? And then you sit around a table and it's a horror story, and there's a Jenga tower in the middle. It's the reason I own a Jenga tower. And what we do is you play the game. You have a conversation, just like you were playing a Powered by the Apocalypse game, except instead of rolling dice, if you get to a moment where there's like, I don't know if you can do that or not, the GM will ask you to make a pull, or maybe 2 pulls if it's, particularly tough situation. And then you have to pull from the Jenga tower. And if you succeed, then your character succeeds. If the Jenga tower falls, you die. So that's Dread. And then when the tower falls, you rebuild it. And as more characters die, you kind of pull out more and more blocks each time you rebuild the tower. So like the tension kind of always keeps building, but it's really cool. And I got to admit, one of the things that I really appreciate about it is the way that it emulates the fiction of these kind of suspense horror thrillers, because the tower starts to, get more, at the beginning, everybody's like, oh, let's do this. Let's do this. Let's do this. You're pulling blocks. Then the tower starts to get really, really sketchy. and people start being like, you know, no, I'm not going to do it. I'll try to find another way. Or I'm sorry, I can't save the NPC. I'm not risking pulling from the block. And so things start to get really, really crazy. And then everyone's on edge because like you could get on edge just playing normal Jenga, let alone, you know, with a horror RPG element. And when the tower finally falls, everyone's like, no. But it's also this like release of tension. Like in a horror movie, when someone dies, it usually kind of is like almost a reprieve. And the tension kind of it doesn't stay elevated for 3.5 hours, right? It kind of ebbs and flows because the tower kind of gets rebuilt and suddenly everything kind of is easy again. So like it kind of like you get a chance to relax, and I really appreciate that. The last thing I'll say about the book is not only does it have, I mean, it's not really a complicated game. So much of the book is really dedicated to teaching you how to play Dread, how to make good questionnaires, how to invoke horror and horror atmosphere. Like it talks about like, you know, mood lighting and how you position yourself and where you sit as a game master in order to sort of, you know, really build up that atmosphere of game. So really fun, awesome, amazing game. I've had a great time every time I've played it, and I think it's innovative and great. I think it's an A game. It's fantastic. I wouldn't say it's like my favorite game of all time because horror genre isn't that, but this game is really, really good. So Dread gets an A. Now, Rick wanted to see me stream from the sea, but Smith's Dying Wife did want to see a 4th edition book. We got those. How about we do 4th edition Monster Manual with Orcus on the cover? You know, 4th edition Monster Manuals had this kind of really cool thing where like each Monster Manual had one sort of iconic monster that was typically on the cover. That was like the big bad solo boss of that encounter. It's like even the books were kind of designed with playability. Like it's almost like it's like when you got Monster Manual 1, you're like, okay, we're gonna do an Orcus campaign, and it's gonna build up to Orcus. And then it's like, oh, Monster Manual 2 came out. Monster Manual 2 came out. Okay, we're going to do a Demogorgon campaign. And we're going to, you know, go towards Demogorgon. You know, Orcus might have been undead, and then Demogorgon is more traditional demons. And then, oh, we're going to do a Loth campaign, and it's going to end with us fighting, you know, the Queen of the Spiders. Anyways, Monster Manual 1 had some problems with the math, but they figured it out later. That doesn't mean it's a bad book. It's just they were still trying to figure out how this game operated. That being said, it's wonderfully laid out, as all of the Monster Manuals are. It starts with this fantastic format, which we've talked about before. You know, you have a heading here for like aboleths, and then this is going to give you 1, 2, 3, 4 different aboleths, some of which are brutes, or controllers, or lurkers, or artillery, so that you have aboleths that can perform a different role in the game. And so it's just a fantastically laid out book with some really evocative monsters, very tight stat blocks that are pretty easy to tell you what they do. Again, it comes with examples of pre-built encounters using a couple different monsters from, say, this section and maybe others. And then it's also got some basic information about tactics and how to fight the monsters, or how the monsters might fight. They cram a lot of value in here. And again, these monsters I think are very easy to read and learn. You know, a Monster Manual or 4th edition stat block is like, you know, it's got, the first line is going to be what its like basic attack is. Then it's going to give you any of its reactions, and then it's going to give you any of its encounter powers, and then it's going to give you any of its daily powers. So it's like, it's in this very, very nice format that's like, you know, fantastic. Yeah, I think the monster, and of course this is a Monster Manual 1, and of course that means it has the classic monsters, you know, it's got clay golems and orcs and cyclopses and beholders and, you know, hook horrors and Githyanki and gnolls and gargoyles. So it's got all the fun ones that we really want to look forward to. I will say this. Yeah. I mean, I think William Brandis in chat, and I want to agree with him. If you're used to playing like a Pathfinder, or you're used to playing Dungeons & Dragons, when you play this game and you get a stat block, even a complicated stat block, and it's literally every single thing that you would need. There's no need to reference or look up anything else. It's like revolutionary. It really is a game changer. This is a solid book. I'm going to ding it a little bit because they hadn't really quite figured out the math yet. I do love it. The art's great. Cover by Wayne Reynolds. But I'm going to give it like a B+, just because they hadn't really figured out the math yet. I mean, they get there. Don't worry. They get there. All right, next game. Last year's Any Gold winner, Game of the Year, is Thirsty Sword Lesbians. Now, to be clear, this game has a very strong message about, gender and queerness and all that stuff. And it has a very strong political message, and that's okay. You can make your book whatever you want it to make. But I mean, let's be clear. That's not why it won or why it didn't win any sort of awards. It won those awards because it's a really, really, really well-designed Powered by the Apocalypse game. And fundamentally, this game, to me, is the spiritual successor to Monster Hearts. Now, Monster Hearts obviously has kind of that edgelordness to it. It's kind of got that darkness to it. It has, sex moves, which make some people uncomfortable. And there's kind of a dark idea there. But Thirsty Sword Lesbians is really more about like romance and like swashbuckling romance. And before you think, think about Han Solo, right? Right before he goes into the carbonite, he grabs Leia, he kisses Leia, I love you, I know, right? It's those kind of moments that this game is really trying to act out. Thirsty Sword Lesbians kind of takes that new Powered by the Apocalypse tone or theme of using conditions. So if we just talked about Avatar, Avatar Legends, but also Root, any of these games that use conditions nowadays, instead of hit point bars or anything like that, I think are really interesting because it's a great cue to sort of say, this is how I'm feeling in this moment. So Thirsty Sword Lesbians kind of took that tech from Magpie and sort of incorporated it into their game. And at the same time, they also continue to use strings from Monster Hearts as a way to sort of represent as a meta currency who do you have leverage over? And instead of it being some vague concept, it's something that you can physically represent as tokens and say, I have some strings on you. And there's an idea here, not necessarily of party, PvP, but the idea that sometimes people in the party might be opposed to one another. And one of the things that you can do is you can offer, if you get a string on somebody, you can offer somebody that string back and basically say, I'm going to wipe it clear. And if they do what they ask, if they do what you ask them to do, they get to mark an experience point. And, we like to level up. And so this is a way of the game sort of kind of creating these kind of interesting bargains where one player wants to go and save the princess, but the other player says, like, no, we have a job to do. We need to destroy the evil Star Lord before he destroys another solar system. And, the other character can sort of make an emotional appeal and give you that string and say, remember that time I pulled you out of the trash compactor back on Seleucus 4? You owe me. You can't let the love of my life die. Come on. And the player can say, all right, I'll take it. I'll get rid of the string. I'll take the experience point and we'll go do the thing. It just provides a mechanical incentive to do it. Other than that, it's a Powered by the Apocalypse game. It's got some cool playbooks and some neat tech, but I just thought it was like an elegant design. It really, I think, captures that sort of swashbuckling romance really well. So Thirsty Sword Lesbians gets, what does it get for me? Probably like a B+, maybe an A-. Yeah, I'll go with A-. It's good. It's just, it's very specific in its genre. There's nothing much that this thing does that's actually bad. So this is actually pretty good. Night, Frosty. Take care, my friend. Enjoy. We're playing Abomination Vaults tomorrow as well, too, Frosty. Funny story. So good night. All right, we've got a 3.5 book, the Planar Handbook. This was as close as 3rd edition got to Planescape. And this was their attempt to try to create a book that would allow you to sort of do plane adventures. It had some new races, stuff like, well, ASMR wasn't really a new race, but some of the races that we would typically associate with Planescape. And then they had some new feats that, and what they called 3rd edition 3.5 had these idea of substitution levels that came out really late in the game. And substitution levels were kind of like archetypes in a way. I wasn't a huge fan of them. And of course, infinite prestige classes, new magical items, new spells, new monsters, and then so splat, 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 splat. And then the last chapter, chapter 7, starting on page 135, had planar sites, which in theory should be interesting. It's got some random planar charts, talks about planar breaches, of course, a map of Sigil. Again, this was really trying to be the 3.5 Planescape book. There's a cool picture of Sigil. Sigil's built, by the way, on the inside of a donut ring, if you didn't know that. Sigil is a toroid, and the city is actually on the inside of the tire, not the outside. So if you look up in Sigil, you see the other side of the city. It's pretty cool. It always looks like it's curving up and away from you. Anyways, that being said, I don't really feel like this book delivered. The Great Wheel is not really my favorite, and I liked Planescape because of all the extra Planescape-y things that it had in there. And this book it had them, but didn't really have them. It's actually kind of surprising. Bruce Cordell's one of my favorite game designers, but did not deliver it with Planar Handbook. I think I'm going to give it a D. I really thought this book was disappointing. I wanted a lot more out of this. Remember that Plane Below, that book that from 4th edition we talked about, I think, last time? That was a way better version of what this book was. So, sorry. Just a reminder, I can't make any promises, but if you want to maybe talk or see a specific game, feel free to drop a tip or a super chat, and I will see if I can find it in the pile or at least something adjacent. Probably categories of game are better than specific games, but, we'll keep on going. All right. This is the Goodman Games. There it is. Goodman Games translation of B1 and B2, In Search of the Unknown and Keep on the Borderlands, classic adventures from the early 80s, late 70s that were originally used for basic Dungeons & Dragons. Goodman Games got the rights to them, and they republished them. It's a very thick tome because it basically has a complete reprint of the original module, which you can see here, using that original, from the original map to the sort of original text that was found in the module from 1980 or 1979 or whatever it was. But then they also updated it into modern day formatting and 5th edition D&D. And we played this. We played B2, Keep on the Borderlands. Now, I've played B2, Keep on the Borderlands, a million times. And I've played it a lot at conventions. I've run a lot of Dungeon World games in Keep on the Borderlands. But I've never actually I've never had a group really beat it. I've never had a group of course, this is old school. You're literally not going to clear every single room on the map. But we played it for about 10 or 11 sessions and using a very house-ruled version of 5th edition, which we called Dungeon Time Extreme. And the group, sure enough, made their way in and fought goblins and kobolds and orcs. And then they fought the owlbear, which they embarrassed because color spray or sleep or something is still pretty powerful and broken in 5th edition D&D. They fought some hobgoblins, but never really fully dealt with them. They snuck in the back way. They fought some gnolls. They killed a bunch of them with AoEs. They found the back entrance in the Temple of Evil, and eventually they made their way through and, defeated the evil cult. And again, total sandbox. within the context of this dungeon, for those of you who are not aware about Caves of Chaos, or B2, Keep on the Borderland, takes place in the Caves of Chaos. And the Caves of Chaos is actually like 7 or 8 mini dungeons that are kind of sometimes connected to one another. But for the most part, it's like a series of caves in this ravine. And as you go further to the west, the cave and up the ravine, the caves become more and more difficult challenges. So it's like a great way to sort of have like a dungeon-based design, but instead of levels, you have like level 1, level 2, level 3, you have these different caves. It was a lot of fun. I had a great time playing with the boys, and I actually thought they did a really great job with this. Just getting the old reprint was great. Look, it's got a ribbon. Can't go wrong with a ribbon. Yeah, I thought this was pretty good. Gonna give this a... I'm gonna give this a solid B. I thought it was done really well. It's pretty thick though, and kind of expensive. $50. All right. Did I ever see the movie Elysium? Elysium sounds like a similar design to Sigil. I have not seen the movie Elysium. Enders is here. Welcome, Enders. Just in time to be able to listen on the drive home. All right. I will make sure I try to describe things, Enders, as much as possible so that you can visualize what I'm saying. Well, we just talked about it. It's on top. I might as well do it. All right. This is the 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons Player's Handbook. This is not my favorite game in the world. 5th edition D&D just it just didn't grab me the way that some of the other versions of D&D did. I think by the time 5th edition D&D came out, I'd played too many games. I had seen too many things. I kind of knew what I wanted to. And the reason why ultimately I think I was disappointed in 5th edition D&D is because I had always seen D&D as being a game that felt like it was advancing and it was evolving and it was trying to become a better game. And after 3rd edition and then 4th edition, 5th edition felt like a step backwards for me. There were things that I was intrigued by and interested in, and I thought were kind of neat and kind of cool. Like I still love the way like the bless spell works in 5th edition. But I saw things like hit dice, and I thought, this just seems like a really bad implementation of healing surges. And I saw them return to the problems of Vancian magic. And it just felt like, to me, maybe I'm too much of a 4th edition fan, but it felt like to me like too much of a mea culpa for 4th edition. And I just saw that kind of DNA all over the game. That being said, I don't have a lot of the problems that other people have with it, because the game is just dead simple. I mean, dead simple. I mean, the balance in this game is horrible. We all know this, right? Lucky and whatever, sharpshooter, great weapon mastery, sentinel, or whatever those feats are just completely ridiculously busted and broken. But fundamentally, I think just the basics of this game of D20, pick a stat, maybe a proficiency, add those two numbers together, and then sometimes the GM will tell you you have advantage or disadvantage. I think that's a fantastic system for any sort of rules light play. I played 5th edition it was just recently. I ran that game. It was house ruled, but I didn't look up a single thing once, and I didn't even care to. I literally didn't even, I think sometimes Smith would look up a rule in a book just to see if we were like really cheating or but it was totally unnecessary. I had zero problem making any sort of rule up that I wanted to at will, because it didn't matter. Who cares about balance? I didn't care about balance. Again, I ran that dungeon game for like 12 sessions, 11 sessions in 5th edition, and I don't even know anything. I never looked at the encounter building rules once. I don't know them. There are people like, oh yeah, because they're bad. I wouldn't even know. I have no idea. Never looked at them. If there were 40 gnolls rampaging down the corridor trying to overwhelm the players, then there were 40 gnolls. If there were 2, there were 2. I didn't care. Deal with it. That was the way we played. I'm actually going to give 5th edition D&D a C. I think it's fine. I don't think it's as horrible as some people think it is. Like most things, I think people overreact and get super tribal. I think it's a fine introduction to the hobby. It clings to some of the roots in a weird way, but it's a nice book. I mean, the cover is very pretty. So yeah, that's 5th edition D&D. I see Voldo in the chat, who was in that Dungeon Time Extreme game, says we are pretty good at just dealing with it. Exactly. That's your go-to. Zach says, I have been running 5e for 3 years and I have never looked at the encounter building rules either. Yeah, who cares? Yeah, Casey, I think if you strip out a lot of those bad rules, I think just make it just D20 plus stat plus proficiency and just advantage, disadvantage. I think you have a pretty reasonable rules light way of resolving game actions pretty well. I mean, I still get that spells are very powerful, but I've never really minded spells being very powerful, so I'm kind of the wrong person to talk to about that too. Up next, The Forbidden Lands, The Bitter Reach. This is a campaign setting for Forbidden Lands, which I think we covered in our first stream. Forbidden Lands from Free League it's kind of its own game system based off of the Year Zero engine, and is kind of a simulationist, gamist kind of game, which has like a strong focus on resource management. How much food do you have? How much whatever you have. Now, the first game took place in sort of a haunted, cursed land. This one takes place in, Icewind Dale in the frozen north, and it's got some pretty brutal rules about how you will or won't die and freeze to death out here in the frozen tundra. There's a lot of this book that I really, really like. I think the idea of playing into a game that really makes survival, kind of first and foremost in everybody's mind, I think is really, really, really interesting. And, there's a whole journeys section here. And, there's weather tables. And these aren't just like generic weather tables. These are weather tables with rules attached to them. And then there's a whole section on cold and the effect that cold will have on you. Rules for making fire and searching for fuel for your fires. So there's, again, this is if you don't like the concept of like journeying and traveling, and kind of survival-based role-playing, not a good idea. But I think Bitter Reach takes that concept from the original campaign, which came with Forbidden Lands, which is called The Raven's Purge, and like takes it up another notch. It's a beautiful book. I think it's really well designed. They've got like a cool, I don't know how to describe it. It's not a sandbox. It's like a story, but it's done through locations, not through plots. It's a really weird way that they do the campaign. Basically, they like seed a campaign through different cool adventuring locations, but it's not like this person's attacking the castle. Oh, there's a note that you find that tells you need to go somewhere. It's more of just like, as the players explore the Bitter Reach, they encounter more and more of these sites and they start to kind of see what the bigger picture is. It's a beautifully well done book. I think it's really, really strong. I'm going to give it like a solid B, leaning towards B+. I think it's just really, really well done. And, sometimes the layout isn't that, like, it's beautifully laid out, but it can be kind of sometimes hard to find things in the book. It doesn't have, there's a lot of text. There's not a lot of like charts and graphs. It's very wordy, a lot of words. All right. But it's good. And the art's fantastic. And it's got this really nice feel to the cover. All right, moving on. Cortex Prime by Cam Banks. This isn't a role-playing game. GM Scott with a super chat, $20. Since Smith's got 4E covered, y'all got any more of them 13th ages? All right, I hear you. I probably do. Somewhere in here. I'll look for him, Scott. Cortex Prime is really a game system to play, to kind of make your own game system. It is a very narrative-based game, really more at home with sort of creating your own kind of like TV show or story. It's a very, very meta game. And even just the way that you play this game is like, it's almost too meta for me. It's almost too narrative for me. I think the game is kind of needlessly complex. I think it has a lot of procedures that aren't really required. I think the scenes and the build out sheets are far more complicated than they need to be. I would say that if you're the kind of group or GM who basically really likes the GM makes a story and we're going to play through it and kind of video game way, you know, like it's a video game. It's still us pushing the buttons. We can, you know, move our controller left or right. But at the end of the day, when you play through a video game, you're kind of at the mercy of the game's author, right? The game's designers. That is how Cortex Prime feels like to me. It feels like a game that is designed more for players who want to show up and just sort of, you know, kind of get taken along on a ride and push buttons at right times. And it, you know, kind of has an illusion that you're doing something. Whereas everything around you is sort of this artificial narrative construct. It's really not my favorite. It's not my style. And I don't think that even the design of this book is particularly well done. I'm going to give Cortex, I like Cam Banks though. He's a nice guy. I've met him a couple times. So sorry, Cam, but I'm going to give Cortex Prime a D. It just doesn't do it for me. Sorry. Gets the D. Damien coming in with a $6 super chat. I know Damien has a lot more, $5, has a lot more experience than I do. He says, Cortex is build a game system. It's more robust than a Cypher or a Fate, but it's also a ton more work for GMs. And you guys, you all know that I don't like a ton more work for GMs. That's not my bag. All right. What do we got here? Now I feel I gotta find something. I gotta keep an eye out for 13th Age, GM Scott. There's only so many books for it. All right, we're gonna keep going in. We'll find it, GM Scott. All right, what do we got in here? I have this adventure several times, so this might appear again. This is the Pathfinder first edition conversion of the Necromancer Games classic, The Lost City of Barakus. Necromancer Games, for those of you who don't know, was a company that that's their symbol there. It's the symbol of Orcus, also sometimes known as Frog God Games. Won an Emmy award winning. This is again is a reprint that they made for Pathfinder First Edition. It originally came out for Third Edition. Necromancer Games tagline was new school rules, old school feel. They created adventures that were very old school. You know, they would have CR, you know, they'd have CR 17s next to the CR 5s. Now this is Third Edition, Pathfinder 1. So that's a big difference. But of course, it's not as bad as with the Pathfinder 2, where you have level-based ACs and stuff like that. But it was a underground dungeon and city. I don't know if we have a map here. Looks like it's a level 5 dungeon, level 5 levels of dungeon. Doesn't look like we have some maps. Maybe we do have some maps. But the really great thing about this book is this book is an entire campaign in one. For starters, it gives you a city called Endhome, and it gives you a ton of information about the city. Here's the wilderness, and Endhome is down here, and then Barakus is up here in the Duskmoon Hills. But then in addition to all of that, it has this fantastic section. Again, this is all about Endhome. It's got random encounters in the slums during the day, during the night. It's got, you could adventure all throughout just this little city. It's got maps for the sewers, magic weapons that have been stolen or for sale. But then out in the wilderness, there's a thieves guild and the Green Tree Bandits, the Were-Rat Warrens. All of this stuff is just in the city. Then you've got all sorts of adventures about the wilderness. There's random encounter tables. There's little mini dungeons. Oh, you find a mysterious crypt. You find the Grimlock caves. And they're just these kind of like little mini adventures. The Crumbling Cave, the Big Stupid Giant, and so on and so forth. All these kind of areas. And then finally, the last half of the book, you get to the actual lost city of Barakus itself. And, you know, here's like, okay, this is level 1 of the lost city of Barakus. So it's a bit more of a proper dungeon, you know, with somewhere in the neighborhood of like 34 rooms, 35 rooms. So much bigger. And then you have 5 levels around this size. And again, there's no plot. You just explore it and have fun and you learn things. It's not like it's just hack and slash. I mean, that's the part of this is like, oh, there's a hidden lesson, there's a hidden story, and there are factions that are trying to do stuff. It's a really, really awesome dungeon. We tried to play it a few times. William Brandis, aka Aaron Smith, I think ruined them every single time we tried to play it. That is my memory of that. I don't know if that's really what happened, but that is my memory. I definitely remember him trying to drag a horse into the dungeon, which didn't want to go into a narrow passage, so he hog-tied its legs and dragged it through the caves so that it would be forced to go. I do remember that part. So yeah. Also, yes, the Ratman fight we had. I can actually pull this up here. We had one of the coolest fights of all time. This area right, I think, in here is like a warren of ratmen, not were rats, just ratmen. And we had like them swarming out over the party. And it was like this epic, like 300, you know, like the movie, not the 300 Ratmen, but like there were only 3 or something PCs and they fought up against like 20 or 30 Ratmen. You know, they were holding the choke holds and like, you know, the players had their shields and they were trying to be overrun and, you know, other PCs were stabbing over the top and throwing burning hand spells. It was like this really epic, awesome fight. So I have a very strong fondness for this. And it's a really well designed dungeon and it's compact and it's nicely done. It's got tons of information. This is a solid A+. It's a beautiful Necromancer design. And it doesn't get too crazy like some Necromancer game products do. Like Rapana Thuk. All right. It's on to another 3.5 book, Races of Stone. They came out with, I think, 3 or 4 Races books. I think there was Races of Stone, Races of Destiny, Races of the Wild, and there might have been one more. Races of Stone was sort of your dwarf and gnome book. This book also introduced the Goliath to Dungeons and Dragons, and very popular. This book was sort of a Lost Omens-ish book in the sense that it had just all this cultural information about dwarves, how they felt about death and love and war and what their culture was like and what their society was like. And each of these races books had a section, a little short story that was sort of like the day in the life of a dwarf who isn't an adventurer, the day in the life of a halfling or a gnome who is not an adventurer. It was kind of interesting. They gave us, you know, they give you stuff about the language and the dwarven naming and all sorts of stuff. And then chapter 2 was about gnomes, and chapter 3, I think, is about Goliaths. Let's see if I was right. A lot of Goliaths. They said fuck gnomes. There we go. Chapter 3 was about the Goliath. There it is. The Goliath. The half giant. And then, of course, chapter 6 in the back of the book, it's pure splat. This is where it had like, oh, this is what a dwarf can do with crafting. Oh, very cool. Here's some new feats for you. Here's a dwarven bardic feat, and here's an earth sense feat for dwarves, and racial feats that you have to be a dwarf for a Goliath to take. Just kind of splatty, you know, as always. Yes, Aaron, this is the one that had dwarf levels. So remember we talked about late 3.5 introduced the idea of substitution levels. So this book had substitution levels. So here is the dwarf fighter, which were specific levels that a dwarf could take in Fighter at levels 1, 2, and 3. I'm sorry, 1, 2, and 8. And instead of getting the normal fighter benefits of level 1 or level 2 or level 8, you got what the dwarf fighter benefits were, which were things like, better axe proficiency, more racial hatred, and your heavy armor expertise, as opposed to whatever the fighter would normally get. They also had a dwarf cleric racial substitution thing, and they did that for the gnomes and everything like that. These books, I think, were actually a lot of fun. I have a very fond... Yeah, exactly, Lance. I think I said in the beginning when I talked about racial substitution levels, I called them archetypes, and I said I didn't actually like these. The classic one that Smith is referring to, the dwarf, we really liked it because Aaron had a dwarf that never got high enough level to actually take any class but dwarf. But Smith, no. What you're thinking of, I think, is something different. I think what you're thinking of is from Unearthed Arcana, actually. Where you're literally just, I think, a pure dwarf. Anyways. But you know what? So I find these books they were fun. They were fun to read, and it was interesting to kind of learn about these fantasy races, if you like that Lost Omen stuff. I'm going to give Races of Stone a B-. It's mostly a splat book, but there's some fun lore in there, and I think they did a pretty nice job, and I've always looked back on them very fondly. All right. Remember, I'm still looking for something from 13th Age. God help us. All right. Eberron, the 3rd edition campaign setting designed by Keith Baker, was, I think, a fantastic campaign setting. I thought it was designed for adventure. It was, it didn't have like the stodgy politics and everything's been explored feel of like Forgotten Realms or Greyhawk. This was literally a campaign setting designed to win a contest. And it did it. And it introduced these kind of magic punk. It was the first time Wayne Reynolds became an artist in the Dungeons & Dragons universe. And so his style became very iconic to the campaign setting. And it definitely has a pulp feel. Eberron, there's a whole section here about the tone of Eberron. And it talks about, the Mummy, Brotherhood of the Wolf, Casablanca, Pirates of the Caribbean, Raiders of the Lost Ark. These are sort of the themes and the tones of it. It felt and read like a very different book than we had ever seen before in D&D. And it sort of takes place almost like a post-World War I Europe, where there's sort of this détente after all of this stuff. You have these characters that are kind of larger than life and pulpy. And yeah, I mean, it's a really cool book. Dragon marks were a really cool idea. The idea of giving magical, like sort of lineages of magical powers to non-spellcasting people to sort of democratize magic and turn it into a more, sort of more of an industrial application of magic meant that magic in Eberron was very much a commodity. It wasn't something kind of super special and crazy and weird. I thought Eberron was really good. I really enjoy the book. I think it's a fun setting. It's kind of magic punk, swashbuckling, pulpy action in D&D, and I thought it was really good. I enjoyed it at the time, and I think I still enjoy it now. So Eberron's going to get an A for me. I think it's really good. I really liked Eberron, and I like it more now than I did before. All right. This one will be quick. You had to get dinner. I did not do any. You did not miss your book. This was a game system I kickstarted because I love R.A. Salvatore. He wrote it with his sons, Brian and Gino Salvatore, and this was him creating an RPG out of the world of Corona, which is from his Demon Dactyl Demon Wars series. And they made a Kickstarter. Let's see if I'm in here somewhere. Probably. It doesn't seem to. Is it in alphabetical order? Oh, here we go. Here we go. There we are. Derek Melenda. Anyways, yeah, this game kind of sucked. It wasn't good. It was just kind of it's not a good game. I'm sorry. I'm not even really going to go into it. It tried to take all the magic of Demon Wars, which involves gems, and try to create this magic system. It just didn't really work out that well. It just felt like a clumsy version of D&D. It was needlessly complicated where it needed to not be complicated. And sorry, it was just not a very good game. R.A. Salvatore's Demon War Reformation, and that's probably why you've never heard of it. R.A. Salvatore's Demon War Reformation gets an F from me. I actually think I have 2 copies of this because I like kickstarted it to get like two main books, so that way, like when we played it, I could give some. I'd have 2 books for the table. We never played it. I was like, okay, forget about it. We can skip this one, guys. All right, moving on. I just feel bad because I'm looking for this 13th Age book. But God help me, and who knows where it is. All right, here we go. Blast from the Past. The Book of Vile Darkness, complete with the warning, content is intended for mature audiences only. Now, of course, the Book of Vile Darkness has been an artifact that had been in D&D since the very beginning of the game. But Wizards of the Coast decided to be super edgelord and produce the Book of Vile Darkness to try to be real edgy. Written by Monty Cook and by Bruce Cordell. So, you know, they're going to have some interesting stuff in here. This book is rated R. I mean, here's the Dread Emperor who uses enslaved children as meat shields. This book is very famous for having a feat called Lich Loved, which is basically that through repeated sexual contact with the undead, you now are sort of immune to some certain undead powers. There's information about curses, sacrificing people for power. There's boobies in the illustrations. The prestige classes are all hyper evil, and then the spells are things like the spells, which are all basically, you know, super evil, immediately steal your soul, immediately make you evil. They almost are as evil sounding as most Pathfinder 2 basic occult spells, but not quite. Pathfinder 2 is still a little bit more evil. So yeah, it's not a good book. It's just not a good book. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. You know, it's there for the shock factor. It's not. I mean, I mean, maybe if you want, like, I don't know, a D&D gore gross out, but like, I don't know why you need rules for any of this shit. Like, you don't need to know how many bonus points of magic power you get for sacrificing a creature based off of its hit dice. We just don't need rules for that. But third edition was so far up its ass with its own obsession with rules that, yeah. Now this book is very famous in our personal gaming group because I was running a campaign, a third edition campaign. This book had just come out. I was completely ignoring it, and I was running Return to Temple of Elemental Evil. And we had a great game going with some of our friends from high school. And I was going to be out one week. And Aaron Smith, my friend, decided, I'm going to roll. Kate, you know, you're going to be out. Can I run something in your campaign instead, just so we can do something on Friday? And I said, yeah, sure. Absolutely. Run a game. That's awesome. So then, like, the next day I start getting like texts about how things went horribly, horribly wrong. I had mononucleosis. Yeah. Okay. So this was during college. Aaron having also just got the Book of Vile Darkness, decided to be like a sadistic fuck DM and basically started like offering the party members magical items if they would just sacrifice each other. By the way, that's not even a rule from this book. That's the best part. Like, there is no rule for that. Aaron was just making this up anyways. He was just being like, oh yeah, it's from the Book of Vile Darkness. Long story short, the party all kind of turned on each other. They all like PvP'd each other. It was a big clusterfuck. And then one of our friends who we'd played with D&D with since like, you know, high school was basically like, yeah, I'm not coming back. And he didn't come back. And we never literally ever saw him again. Ever. Then he changed his name. So I don't know if that was scarring for him, but Aaron ruined a campaign, ruined a friendship, and potentially maybe ruined someone's life. So that was my experience with, you know, that's my experience with Book of Vile Darkness. Book of Vile Darkness, I think, is a bad book. I think it's stupid and horrible, and I give it an F. I just think it was totally unnecessary. By the way, I thought Book of Exalted Deeds was also hot garbage. So we'll get there when we get there now. KC says, reading this, meaning Book of Vile Darkness, while listening to Limp Bizkit's Chocolate Starfish and the Hot Dog Flavored Water was probably my peak teen edgelord phase. Yes, this book was clearly designed to appeal to edgy, you know, teen edgelord wannabes for sure. I mean, look, if that was you, I respect it. I mean, I think we were all there at some point in time, but modern Derek looks at that book and says, what are we even doing here? All right. What about Old Reliable? That's right. It's the Finder playing game. Pathfinder First Edition was a functional reprint of 3.5 so that Paizo could keep making adventures. And you know, we all know Pathfinder 1. It is 3.5, but with more feats than you got in 3.5. By the way, 3.5, you got a feat at 1 and 4 and 7. This game, you got it at like 1 and 3 and 5 and 7. You got like a feat all the time. I think you got more ability score boosts. And of course, they added things like capstone abilities. They made paladins just absolutely ridiculous. And of course, you know, it was cool because there wasn't really a dungeon master guide. It kind of, you know, was a real thick book. I can't complain about the binding. It's just, you know, it's just been through a lot, right? So like, can't really complain about that. It looks like, oh yeah, here. These are the only two this is like the one I probably played more paladins in Pathfinder 1 than I played in anything else in the entire game. Maybe wizards are probably number 2, but I played a lot of paladins. I thought they were just so fun and they were so powerful and they're so broken. I don't think I could ever play a champion in Pathfinder 2 because of how sad they are compared to, you know, Sela, who was Lord in frickin' Pathfinder 1. I mean, Pathfinder 1 paladins were just so good. So powerful. Yeah, I mean, you know, it cleaned up certain elements of 3.5, and when after we were done playing 4th edition, you know, but this is before 5th edition came out, we said, yeah, we'll check out Pathfinder. And Pathfinder 1 was our game up until, you know, Pathfinder 2. So, you know, it really filled that. We did not go to 5th edition. We played 4th edition till about 2012 or so. And then we played Pathfinder 1, maybe 2011. And then we played Pathfinder 1 from like 2011 to 2019, 2020. So great game, fantastic rule set. Love the art cover. It's kind of covered by duct tape, but love the cover art by Ryan Reynolds. It's a classic. And, you know, it kicked off, in a way, the reason why we're all here. Pathfinder, the role-playing game, core rulebook, gets an A from me. I had so many great memories and so much great fun and times playing this as both a player and a GM. You know, I think we all do. So, Pathfinder gets an A. Pathfinder core rulebook. We got a box set. All right, so this is Gamma World that came out during the 4th edition D&D era. And Gamma World, for those of you who don't know, is weird, post-futuristic, post-apocalyptic, strange, odd sci-fi. It came in this box set. Here are the character sheets. Let's see what we have here. We had, oh yes. So the way the character sheet was sort of like you kind of would randomly roll origins. This is actually Smith's sheet. And you can see that his first origin was a rat swarm and his second origin was telekinetic. So Aaron's character was a floating swarm of rats that had psionic powers. And the name of his character was Splinters, which I thought was particularly clever. This character died somehow because the game is kind of a meat grinder. You got a couple different powers that were like on cards, but it kind of worked like 4th edition where you had encounter powers and daily powers. Anyways, so this was Aaron's telekinetic rat. Here is a character who had the android origin and the hawkoid origin, and their name was Laserhawk. They were apparently lost in no time, whatever no time is. So this was a flying android hawk person. This was Professor Fantastic. They had the abilities of Mindbreaker and Plastic. So obviously a mixture of Professor X and Mr. Fantastic. Oh, this was Aaron's final character. I remember this one. This is Sergeant Master Johnson, who has the two origins engineered humanoid and cockroach. And I remember specifically, he said, it looks just like a space marine or like a marine from StarCraft or like a space marine from Warhammer 40K. But when the visor opens up inside, it's just a cockroach, dude, like a human-sized cockroach wearing power armor. So this was Sergeant Master Johnson. Anyways, I think from that, you can kind of get a sense for what this game was. It came with all sorts of cool punch-outs and maps and cards, and here are the actual rule books. They're not that long. And like I said, I did some photocopying to make everybody have extra options, but there were all these like power cards that you could use for all of your Omega level powers and stuff like that. It's a very fun pick up and play game. I don't think it really became all that popular. I don't even think they printed it for that long, but it was zany and crazy and kind of fun, and I love it. Roll for Combat says, I have a story about this from WotC, but I don't have enough room for the story. Oh, damn. Well, maybe we'll get the story next time I'm on. I'd love to hear it. I thought this was a lot of fun, and I thought the production quality was insane. You got so much in these box. I love box sets. Gamma World gets like a big B+ from me. Not A, but B+. Very good game. Very good game. Oh yeah, it's D&D branded up there in the corner. Ages 12 and up. All right, what else we got over here? Okay. This is the HackMaster Game Master Guide.
Jack tipped $5. We've got 40 and 13th age covered. How about some fit? Sorry, Derek, but I'm never going to super chat.
Well, thank you so much for that. So we'll do a Forge in the Dark next for us, Jack. And again, I'm still looking for that 13th age for GM Scott. So here's the deal with this. There is a company called Kenzer & Company, Kenzer & Co., and they made a comic which is like a spoof comic of D&D called Knights of the Dinner Table. Fantastic comic. Check it out. You got to find. If you're a D&D fan and you've been playing this game for a long time and you haven't read Knights of the Dinner Table, you are missing out. It is a classic comic. Anyways, they played a game called HackMaster, which is in many ways designed to be a parody of D&D, really focusing in on the most, horrible tropes, of being hack and slash. So they actually made a game called HackMaster. And this game, at the time, nobody actually thought that you could make the rules. Remember how we had this big OGL debacle? Remember that? And how everyone was like, yeah, we're not really sure if you need the OGL or not. Like, does the OGL mean that you can republish the old rules? So no one was really sure. And so HackMaster basically reprinted first edition AD&D. This is a parody of first edition AD&D because they didn't want to just straight up copy it because they were afraid they would get sued. But they said if we make it a parody, then they can't get sued because now it's a work of satire. And so HackMaster, the game engine, including this Game Master guide, is designed to just make fun of some of the worst tropes and stereotypes of D&D. Like sometimes it is purposefully stupidly complicated with like tables that tell you to roll on a table so that you can roll on another table. Again, just to be kind of silly and stupid. But of course, this is a DMG, but what this is, and of course, the whole back part of it is just endless random tables of like just of never ending dungeon design and stuff like this. Yes, this is 100% a serious troll. Now, I do want to show something though, because this game is famous for Chapter 8, Combat, the Art of the Hack. For the critical hit tables. Here are your attack matrices for your different characters. Here are your flanking grids on hexes. And here's your boulder damage if flung by a ballista or by a catapult, depending on the distance and the weight of the catapult. And finally, we arrive at the critical hit tables. Now, this is just for hacking weapons, of course. Here is the crushing weapons critical hit tables. By the way, yes, this is a D10,000 roll. That's right. A D10,000 is what you roll on this critical hit table. D10,000. Here is the puncturing weapons. And here is a breakdown of what bones might be broken, along with random charts, depending on, this will tell you how much damage and what stat penalties you take, depending on which bone you broke. Oh, you broke your third metatarsal? Okay, well, then this is what happens. But here is the muscular system, because you might also rip and shred a muscle element or produce a strain. What about if you get into the viscera and the guts? And well, here's the effect of all of these things that might happen. You know, what if I stab somebody and I hit them in the spleen? Does Pathfinder 2 have a rule for that? Huh? Does it? This game does. So anyways, and then we get to the D1000 fumble and mishaps table, because yes, this game had fumbles as well. Anyways, this is HackMaster, as it says in the back, the HackMaster Game Master Guide. You are the bull in the player character's china shop. GM Scott, I think you'll also recognize this artwork as being definitely first edition inspired. And even the cover is, them fighting the demon, the big demon from the cover of the first edition DMG guide, except this one is, it has just hacked this guy in half. So there is that. Anyways, HackMaster is silly. I can't really give it a great grade because it's kind of purposefully obtuse and difficult to use, and it's designed to be a joke. So I'm only going to give it a C, because as a playable game, it's horrible, but it is really funny if you really know first edition D&D and you want to just laugh at the absurdity of this. William Brandis says S+. All right. Why not? We'll do the old school. Well, William Brandis, we haven't gotten to the Player's Handbook yet. That was just the Game Mastery Guide. So here it is, Blades in the Dark by John Harper, which he calls a Powered by the Apocalypse game, but kind of went on to forge its own version of the game called Forged in the Dark. And Blades in the Dark uses a D6 pool system. The more dice you have, the more proficient you are with a certain action. You roll the dice, and then you determine which what is the highest number you got. You don't total everything. You just see what's the highest number you got. If the highest number you got is a 6, then you have achieved success without any complications. So if you're rolling 3 or 4 or 5 dice, there's a good chance that you might get at least 1 6, in which case you're going to complete your action without any complications. If the highest number you get is a 4 or a 5, however, you've achieved success, but there is a complication that arises. You get what you want, but then you also kind of get something you didn't want. And then lastly, if you get a 1, 2, or a 3, you don't get what you wanted, and there's also now a new problem that you're going to have to face. And if this sounds very similar to Powered by the Apocalypse, it is. It's literally just kind of reworking the math and using a different approach to kind of get to the same results. The big thing about Blades in the Dark is it uses this idea of position and effect. And this is something that I think it's a very convenient way to be able to discuss mechanically with your players what's going on. In a way, it's a lot like 5th edition with advantage, disadvantage, or nothing. It's like, instead of having a million rules and a million bonuses, which I know 5th edition does have some of that, but just imagine getting rid of all of that. And all you have in the game is this something you're good at, or you're in a position where you're kind of in control? Well, then you have advantage. Is this a normal situation? Well, then, it's just a normal D20 roll. Is it a situation where you're kind of desperate? Well, then you have disadvantage. And Powered by the Apocalypse doesn't have that. It's just 2d6 versus 7, basically. Hey, GM Rufus.
GM Rufus tipped $50. I don't really watch movies or TV anymore. Mostly I just work on games, and this channel has been both helpful and enlightening.
Fantastic.
Thanks for doing what you do.
Fantastic. Thank you, GM Rufus. You know what? I don't watch TV anymore either, honestly. I haven't watched TV in years. I do watch some YouTube. I watch, gaming content, and I watch watch repair and woodworking videos and all the other stuff. But I'm happy to hear that you find us entertaining. Thank you so much for your support of the channel. It's very much appreciated. And, we love having you on here, and you're welcome to offer us your thoughts or questions whenever you'd like. But thank you so much for the kind words, and thank you so much for the generous donation. You are you're a good man. So in Blades in the Dark, you have what's called the position, which is controlled, risky, or desperate. So unlike Powered by the Apocalypse, where you just have one roll and that's it, this lets us as a group decide, is this a situation where we kind of feel like our characters are more on the advantage, or is it just like a standard risky maneuver, or is this a desperate situation where we're really kind of pulling this out of our ass? And then the other side of that coin is effect, which is to say, like, if a cleric has, instead of having a million rules for this, okay, like your cleric has a positive energy weapon and is channeling the power of their deity. Okay, you're going to have really good effect against this undead. But if you were doing that same thing against a normal person who maybe just, cheated on their taxes once, that same ability or power might only be limited in its effect. So it provides us with like a really quick, short mechanical, shorthand to be able to talk about things in our narrative in a very quick and effective way. And of course, Blades in the Dark takes place in this sort of steampunk, ghost-haunted city. A lot of people are turned off by that. Blades in the Dark is a game that is, there's a lot I could say about Blades in the Dark. Blades in the Dark is a game where you're criminals, you're kind of scoundrels. You don't necessarily have to be like murderers, but you're kind of no good people in this kind of dark fantasy city. And with kind of some elements of technology that's like, kind of like very Dr. Frankenstein-esque, lots of crackling lightning and energy towers and, weird science. So there's a really strange vibe here that not a lot of people get into. But it fundamentally is a very interesting system, and I love it. Blades in the Dark to me is probably my favorite system to run, hands down. I love it. It is for me the ultimate zero prep game. I could just pick this up and start running a game right now, and it could be anything. It could be everything. S+ for me. I think this game is a revolution. Also, I am a John Harper fanboy. I just am. I almost love every book he makes. I think the way he does game design is the way that I want to play games. So, Blades in the Dark gets an S+ from me. All right. Let's see here. Blades in the Dark, a prequel for Scum and Villainy. We'll get to Scum and Villainy, GM Scott. KC says, I love position and effect, but I still don't know how to run downtime effectively. Yeah, we could do a whole series on that, KC. Seems like players end up spending most of their time reducing stress. Yeah, we could definitely talk about that. Some of that comes down to managing stress. I will admit that. Seems like it could be so cool and good and enable player agency. I wish I knew how to use it well. Yeah, Casey, when I've played Blades in the Dark and Scum and Villainy, like my players almost do the scores just so that they can do cool shit in downtime. And so it's very important that you give players that ability to sort of proceed and push during downtime, because that's really the point of the game where they can kind of be proactive and sort of enact their master plans. And so if they're, not really doing anything or not interesting about it, it's like, yeah, it's not as good. With the fantasy version, would it be Blades in the Dungeon or Dungeons in the Dark? So Dan, that's interesting that you say that, because there was originally supposed to be like with the Kickstarter, and I'm not mad at John Harper for this, but originally because it did so well, they were going to like do 6 or 7 different versions of Blades in the Dark. And eventually we did get a sci-fi one, which is called Scums and Villainy. And then we did get kind of like a military fantasy one, which is kind of very much like Glenn Cook's books, The Black Company, called Band of Blades. But there was, if you search on Google, a game called, I don't think it ever made it past even alpha. It's probably like alpha beta. I believe it was called Blades Against the Darkness, or something like that. Blades Against the Dark. And that was the dungeon delving game where the score was your party of adventurers going into the dungeon and doing like a mission to like get some ancient artifact or kill some monster or whatever, and then going back to town and dealing with like, the downtime back in town. So that was the idea of the game. And it sort of proceduralized the dungeon crawl into the score, and basically it treated doing a delve into the dungeon as the score. It's really interesting. I don't think it ever really made it out of early development, but it's still probably out there on the Googles. The real question to me is, are you going to let how much Steven cuts on you affect your Battlezoo ratings? Well, the thing about it, negative, is, I gave my rating on the Battlezoo Bestiary before I ever even met or knew Steven. So the answer to that should be very obvious. No, it will not affect me. Did Races of Stone have the Deep Warden? Let's take a look, George. Was that a prestige class? It sure did. 105. All right, there it is. The Deep Warden. A D12 super dwarf first line of defense against the Underdark. Pretty badass sounding. All right. Oh no, I know you're being cheeky. -41. I meant like on our show. We did a review episode a while ago about Battlezoo Bestiary. Like we did a whole episode about just Battlezoo Bestiary. All right, lol. Rise of the Runelords. So here's the deal with Rise of the Runelords. It is the most linear freaking thing of all time. It is incredibly linear. But you know what? You fight giants. You fight undead, you fight more giants, you fight more giants, there fight some demons, you fight a big wizard at the end. It is a very linear adventure, but at least you're going to cool places and you're fighting cool things. So I can't be too mad about that. This hardcover back that they did was really beautiful. I love it. I'd love to see them do like an anniversary edition for all of them. Honestly, I'm sure they don't have the money for it, but I just thought it was a really excellently done book. It's a classic adventure. Again, it is super linear. It's like the modern day equivalent of Against the Giants. But, you know, it's got some classic moments. And, you know, it's okay. Anything particular stand out to me? I mean, I think Sandpoint's like a perfect starting town for like a band of adventurers. I mean, maybe Sandpoint and some of the NPCs in Sandpoint are probably some of my favorite parts about the entire adventure. And I really like that you go back there at the beginning of Adventure 4. Yeah, I love how this is like Sandpoint is like a great example of how you should use it, you know? And like, oh, okay, you go in the cathedral, there's a hint of something else. You come back later on, you go, oh, the ancient light is actually something even more insane, you know, like being able to go back to your old level 1 things and like learn more and reuse that space is really cool. Yeah, I mean, Adventure 2 is definitely, you know, Skinsaw Murders is on a very, very different tone, I think, from the rest of the game, but it's a cool adventure, you know, and I really enjoyed playing it on our channel. So would you ever consider running a live play of this book? No. It'd take too long. Rise of the Runelords is going to get a C from me. I mean, it is what it is. It's just a bunch of combat encounters strung together with loose plot and notes from dead NPCs telling you where the next castle is. So somehow that's a classic. I swear, GM Scott, I'm like shocked that there's no I can't even imagine where all my 13th age stuff is. All right. This is a book that I apparently never bought originally, or maybe it got destroyed or something like that. This was the Player Strategy Guide for 4th edition. It was illustrated by the guy who does Penny Arcade, which is kind of weird. And it's a very thin book. It's hardcover, but it's thin. It's kind of strange. And unfortunately, I felt like the strategy was pretty it's pretty limited strategy. It's for very neophyte adventurers. But it's a kind of a cool idea of just a way to say like, hey, if you're interested, like you've played the game, you're clearly interested, you want to take the game more seriously, why don't you take a look through this game or take a look through this book. This book will sort of give you a better sense for the strategy of this game and maybe some of the meta game concepts that you might not be aware of because you're relatively new to 4th edition, or maybe you're relatively new to RPGs. But in terms of like a car op guide, no, it was not that. And a lot of the information here is pretty self-evident. So I'm going to give the strategy guide a D, D+, because I didn't think it was a particularly good book, but I could imagine there being that sort of hyper niche audience that might really enjoy it. Or if like you're really, really brand new to RPGs. So I didn't particularly love it though. So D+. The 1st edition Advanced Dungeons & Dragons Player's Handbook by Gary Gygax, a compiled information for players and dungeon masters. Boy, what a classic, right? Very thin. Doesn't really have the rules. Signed by Dave Arneson, which was pretty cool. Never got it signed by Gary because he died. Actually, Gary died. Dave signed this, and then Dave died the next year. So very kind of sad there. So this is definitely one of my more prized possessions for sure. to have it signed by, one of the two co-creators of D&D. To be fair, they kind of didn't like each other, so maybe they wouldn't have both signed the book anyways. This is first edition D&D. This is, for a lot of people, what D&D was. It was either this or basic. And roll for comment. I'm not signing any of your books. That's okay. I didn't want you to. Again, this book basically tells you how to make a character, and then it tells you what some of the spells are. And then it has a very short section, like very short section. Like we're not even there on rules. It basically just tells you like, hey, here's kind of how initiative works. Here's like how a combat procedure works. This is what a round is. This is what infravision is. You experience, you want this. Poison, it's bad for you. And this is what it means to go on an adventure. And here's, by the way, here's fucking psionics. And that, yeah, randomly. Appendix 1 for psionics. It's like the most crazy, random, stupid thing that just appears out in the back of the book ever. Anyways, this book is gorgeous. It's a classic. It's simple. It's basic. The character classes are boring as shit. There's no doubt about that, right? What does a fighter get? Nothing. What does the cleric get? Well, they get spells, and then they get turn undead at first level, and then that's it. They never get anything else for the rest of the game. So, and then there are some cool classes, paladins and rangers, but you have to roll really well on your stats in order to get them, because you can't just be one. You have to have a 17 or higher in your charisma to be able to be a paladin. Oh, you also need a 14 strength and a 13 wisdom or something. It's really crazy. So the classes that were really cool were hard to be. And, Gary did this because in his mind, how we think of gaming and games was very different back then. And there was almost an element here of if you could just be a paladin, then a paladin won't feel special. And if a paladin is special, then it should be powerful, and it should feel special, and it should be special. So we're going to give it a lot of crazy abilities that's going to actually make that paladin feel kind of broken and powerful, because that's what a paladin would be. Well, how do you prevent people from just everyone being a paladin? You make it so that you need ridiculously high ability scores, which are randomly rolled, by the way. So yeah. Anyways, it's a cool concept, and it of course goes back to a better and headier time. It's not as legendary. It's not going to be S tier like the first edition DMG is, but obviously this is an A+ for it being just a classic game book. And then of course, for me personally, having Dave Arneson sign it makes it like an S tier book for me personally. But in terms of the game that this presents, it's the beginning of everything. And and for better or for worse, and I'll let you could have your opinion on this. For better or for worse, the game fucking hasn't changed that much in 50 years since they printed this. I don't know. That could either be a good thing or it could be a really, really bad thing. But I'll leave it to you to decide that. But I'm just going to say that. They haven't really changed that much, and that's saying something. Either they got it that fucking right the first time, or, they need to change some shit up. So there's that. All right, moving right along. Conveniently, they were next to each other. That's right. It's 2 copies of probably one of my favorite books of all time. This is the 3rd edition Dungeons and Dragons Forgotten Realms campaign setting book. It is a master book. This is, to me, is Sean K. Reynolds' masterclass. This is his magnum opus. This book did such a fantastic job of bringing the world of the Forgotten Realms of Torrell to life. It is beautifully illustrated. It is wonderfully laid out. It has just a beautiful look and color, and the page design is I love this sort of parchment-like texture to it. It describes life in the Forgotten Realms really well, while giving you really great, strong character building options that really make you feel like you're a character in the Forgotten Realms. Of course, it's a 3rd edition book, so it has a couple prestige classes, but not too many. And at least they're tied into the game world, so it feels somewhat responsible. And then most of the rest of the book is just information about the Forgotten Realms. And what's so great about these is, again, they'll tell you about a region And then they'll give you examples of what are the dungeons that are in this area? What are some of the legends? What are some of the myths? What are some of the threats? What are some of the, it's just full of adventure seeds, plots and rumors. And you just get this over and over and over and over again. Like it's not just here's information. It's just like, here's how you use this book to make a cool campaign and set it in the Forgotten Realms. And here are plots and hooks and rumors and adventure sites and cool dungeons and ancient places that just really, make it all very, very beautiful. Yeah, this is duplicates. I just have two copies. Probably from character creation, so that when we were making characters in the Forgotten Realms, I could just hand it out to two people. It's just a beautiful book. I think this is, for me, one of the best campaign books of all time. And for me, this is S tier, Forgotten Realms. All right, how are we standing? All right, we're doing really good. By the way, I'm going to go to at least 9 o'clock. I'll set a timer down when we're getting ready to wrap up the stream. Right now, we are sitting at $267 in Stream from the Sea and just under 200 in enjoying my trip. So as of right now, we'll be doing a live stream from the ocean, or maybe from Haiti, or maybe from the middle of the beach or something like that. But we'll see where we get good internet. But I do want to say thank you to everybody who's tipped today or super chatted or from Tuesday, because obviously this is a lot of fun. And also it's very, very supportive of you. Tips and donations are what keep this channel going. And when I go on vacation and I don't stream, that sets us back a whole week of tips and support. So for you all to come out this week and throw a little extra support in really means a lot to me, really means a lot to the channel. There's a lot of cool stuff that we want to be doing and bringing to you all as we move forward into the future. And selfishly, one day it would be really nice for me to be able to pay myself as well, instead of just buying new cameras. And there will always be new cameras for me to buy, which I probably will buy. But we'll get there someday. And I want to say thank you to everybody who's doing that, and of course all of our patrons who are supporting us. And if you are watching this channel and you don't want us to join our Patreon and you don't want to tip us, that's totally acceptable and totally fine. But what you can do is use our Drive-Thru-RPG affiliate link, which is located in the link below. Also, if you go back to our old videos, we have in the pinned comments links to all of the products that we talk about. And if it's available on Drive-Thru-RPG, we have an affiliate linked Drive-Thru-RPG link there. You go there, you pay the same price, but we get a couple percent. You don't pay any more, but we get a little bit of a kickback from Drive-Thru-RPG. So thank you again for all the support. Let's keep going. We got a nice little pile that we've gone through today. Fourth edition Player's Handbook. That's right. Fourth edition Player's Handbook. Wow. This was a revolution. Now, some people hate this game, but I'm not going to go into a full diatribe about this. But this was a well-designed game. It is laid out very beautifully. The changes that they made, from everything from alignment to the way that the world and the planes were structured, were designed to promote adventuring and gaming and being these larger than life heroes. This was a game that was designed for adventure gaming. It wasn't some physics engine or some mass combat system that they then converted into a role-playing game, which is what D&D was, by the way. The rules were use chainmail, which was a fantasy medieval combat simulator. Anyways, obviously people may or may not like the structure of this game, which of course is that you choose a race and a class, and your class, let's say you're a cleric, as you go up through the levels, at level 1, your cleric is going to know some at-will prayers. Now, this word says at will, so people have a problem with that. But if you erase that and you just call it cantrip, suddenly everybody's fine with it. They're totally fine with it. You can also see that a level 1 cleric has a list of 4 encounter prayers that they can cast. People have a problem with that because it says encounter. If you just erase that and you write focus spell, suddenly by the way, it's from a focus point, and you get it back by lifting weights and doing push-ups on your books. Suddenly everybody fucking loves it. And then they have something called a daily prayer. But then if people go, that's horrible, that's awful. But if you say, okay, it's a spell slot and you can get it back once a day, suddenly everybody's fine with it. And they've been fine with it for 40 years, but because they put it like this in this book, people lost their goddamn minds. Anyways, this book is clean. The system is clean. It is well designed. It's a fantastic book. It has all the magical items that you need for the game. It tells you how to adventure. It goes to level 30. It introduced the Warlord, which is like one of the coolest classes of all time, which has never been really duplicated since. It is, for me, and by the way, it is not just a combat game. That's the biggest thing. The combat section in this game is no longer or bigger than it is in 5th edition D&D or in Pathfinder 2. It's got the same rules, flanking, movement. It literally is the exact same combat game. I cannot stress, that's like saying Pathfinder 2 is a combat game because double slice exists, or because the rogue has the preparation feat, which gives them an extra reaction to using combat. It's completely ridiculous. Instead, this book talks about a great deal, non-combat encounters, how to adventure, how exploration works, movement in exploration, how terrain affects you while you're exploring, vision and light, interacting with your environment. What is this? Simple DCs. If anything, yeah, and then yes, there's a combat chapter with, it has things like taking your turn, rolling initiative, attack modifiers, movement, healing, death, and dying. Yeah, that makes it a combat-only game because it's like normal D&D games don't fucking have rules about death and dying and initiative. That's only for super combat games. Anyways, S tier. This is a fantastic game system, and fuck all the haters. And it's a role-playing game. Role-playing game. It's not a combat game. It's a role-playing game. So, anyways, got a little heated there. Sorry. Didn't mean to. Player's Handbook 2. Now, a lot of people had a problem with Player's Handbook 1 because it didn't have like the monk or the druid or the barbarian in it. And people were kind of like, what? So they released Player's Handbook 2. Actually, hate it or love it, their idea was that every year of the game's life, they would release a new Player's Handbook and a new Dungeon Master Guide and a new Monster Manual. So year 1, you get Player's Handbook 1, Dungeon Master Guide 1, Monster Manual 1. Or they don't have the 1 because it's the first one. Year 2, you get Player's Handbook 2, Dungeon Master Guide 2, Monster Manual 2. Year 3, etc., etc. And they, by the way, they did this. As you'll see, there is a Player's Handbook 3. We've already seen the monster manuals. But anyways, this book introduced the primal classes, the barbarian, the druid, along with a couple new classes, like the Avenger, which is a divine striker. We got a super chat coming in from Damian Williams. Warlord was so awesome. A5E, that's Advanced 5th Edition from Ian World, brought it back. Yeah, I mean, it's a fantastic class. The idea of the Warlord is a fantastic class. The idea of being a martial, non-magical character who is a buffer and a supporter of their allies. Like, that is, like, so awesome. So, yeah, so, like, 4th Edition introduced the Avenger, which was a divine retributor, right? They were from the divine power source. So they were, in theory, they drew upon the same powers as the cleric or the paladin, but whereas the paladin was a tank and the cleric was a leader or a healer, the Avenger was a striker. So they were the divine striker. And they had an ability that was basically advantage. And advantage basically got taken from the Avenger and put into 5th edition. And that is what, now people go, oh, I love advantage. But they're like, I hate 4th edition. So what classes did this introduce? It introduced the Avenger, which is really cool. It's a divine striker. It feels awesome. You feel like a divine assassin or like a divine agent of your deity, focused on vengeance and retribution. It's a very cool class. It introduced the Barbarian, which is a really, really awesome barbarian. The rage powers are really cool. They change. There's different rages so that it's not just I rage. As you get higher levels, you get different rages, like rage of the great beast, rage of the undying storm. And they all do different things. And they provide you with this big initial bonus, and then it gives you a diminished effect that lasts for the rest of the encounter. Very awesome. Bards were an arcane healer, and it was very awesome. Druids were very cool. Invokers weren't really cool. Shamans were okay. Sorcerers were a lot of fun. That was the arcane striker blowing up people at range. And again, I thought the adventure, now, were they as good as Player's Handbook 1 classes? In my personal opinion, no. But if Player's Handbook 1 was a S tier, Player's Handbook 2 is still very solid, A tier. The primal power source is neat. I like it. The additional classes for Arcane and Divine were really fun. This is a great book. I really like it. A tier. We're here anyway, so we'll do it. Player's Handbook 3. Okay. You can only go to the well so many times. Now, for right off the bat, you can see, oh, by the way, they also introduced new races in these books. And I really want to point this out here because I think they have all of the art for the character class. Yeah, here we go. On this one page spread here, this is like all the new classes and all the new races in like one picture. What did they add in this book from races? They added the Goliath, right? The half giant big thing. They added in the Deva, which was like an immortal spirit sent down to the mortal world to act as an emissary for their deity. It added the half orc. It added the gnome. And it added the shifter, which is, kind of like almost like a half werewolf, half kind of lycanthrope. And these are, the weird. Derek only likes things that were in Tolkien. Wrong. I like all of these races. I think these are awesome. I think they're cool. They're flavorful. They have really neat abilities, and they feel really grounded and tied into this game world. I bring that up because fuck this book. I don't like Player's Handbook 3. There are some things I know that Aaron will say that he likes about it. I thought Player's Handbook 3 was stupid. They added they added psionic to the game, and I've never really liked psionics. I didn't really like it in 4th edition either. They added a bunch of weird races that I did not care about at all. They added the Githzari, which is like, the classic edgy plane hopping people, which I could care less. Minotaur, but it was like medium. I hate the idea of a medium Minotaur. I also don't understand why this was in this book. The art was also terrible. They added some sort of, look at me, I'm like a Leshy thing, wild, and it was stupid. And yeah, then they added like the monk and the psionic, and I just didn't like the classes. I felt like they were reaching too far, and I just think it was undercooked. So Player's Handbook 3, it gets a C from me. So S for Player's Handbook 1, A for Player's Handbook 2. This gets like a C minus for me, actually. I'm going to downgrade it to a C minus. It's not a D, but it is absolutely not my favorite. It's unclear what Bjorn was, John. Not to get off topic, but I don't really think I like hybrids. I think I'm okay with niche protection in 4E, actually. I like being in your lane. I like it. I do like it. I hate to say it, but medium-sized minotaurs are in the monster manual, though. Yeah, but not in the 4th edition monster manual. I just don't like when like PCs are like, what are you, like a baby minotaur? It's kind of silly. Yeah, I will say hybrids kind of backstepped a bit from the design. Yeah, that's all I'm saying. I just don't feel like it was appropriate, given the context of the game. All right, we just did a bunch of 4th edition there. All right, Pathfinder, Lost Omens. Pathfinder 2nd edition, Lost Omens, Ancestry Guide. Well, I don't think I've ever opened this book before. Let's see what we get here. We get Asamars and Arzarketi, which are human fish people with spears that can grapple at range. Catfolk, Changeling, Dampiers, Duskwalkers, Hobgoblins, Kobolds, Leshies, Lizardfolk, Orc, Ratfolk, Tengu, Tiefling, Androids, Aphorites, what are those bee people? Beastkin, Fetchling, Flesh Warp, Gansey, Jinnikin, Ifrit, Dryad, Soli, Sylph, Undine, Kitsune, Sprite, Strix. F. I don't like any of those. I don't like any of the ancestries they have. Also, it has Leshy, so it automatically just loses. Horrible. Ooh. Here's a spicy one. Earth Dawn, first edition. Also held together by tape, but not duct tape. Looks like Scotch tape. Earth Dawn, released by the Fossa Corporation in the 90s, was their take on the fantasy role-playing game. And this is before the advent of D20, of course, so everybody had their own system. Earth Dawn was no different. This is a beautiful game. It's all black and white because, you know, back then we didn't have money. It tells you about the world of Bar Save, and it has an incredibly rich, and this, by the way, goes to point out why I don't have a problem with races. Let's go through the races of Bar Save. You have the dwarf, which is actually the most common race in Bar Save. They are like the most civilized race. They are sort of like the ruling race. Dwarves are the top tier race. You have elves, you have humans, you have obsidian, right? And obsidian are basically big rock giant people. You have trolls and orcs. You have Skrang, which are like river-dwelling lizard people with beaks. You have windlings, which are small flying little sylph creatures. Guess what? I like all of these races. Why? Because they are part of this world. They are integrated into its DNA. They do not just feel like some random tacked on ancestry just to fill something in a splat book. So, but yeah, the game itself, you have, it's a class-based system. There's levels. You gain, experience points. You get new powers and abilities. And of course, coming out in the 90s when all you had was second edition AD&D, where, fighters didn't get any sort of power. My FATCO went down. So suddenly you see like, the warrior class in this, what they called a discipline. You're like, oh, look at all these cool abilities you get. Acrobatic strike and air dance and wood skin and anticipate blow and avoid blow, tiger spring, gliding stride, earth skin, cobra strike. It felt like you were playing superheroes, like it was really, really cool and really, really compelling. And the world and the way that the magic, it's not Vancian magic. It's kind of like a blend of weaving from like Wheel of Time, but magic is scary. And it's a fantastic book with a fantastic world. And I think it is a beautiful system. It is the first edition. They do clean up some stuff. There were some problems, some book balancing issues in the second edition of the game. And unfortunately, Earth Dawn went through like about 17 different publishers because the rights kept getting transferred. But the original is the GOAT. I love Earth Dawn. I love the world. The system is clunky at times because of the number of dice you have to roll. I'm going to say that I'm going to give this an A-. A tier, but A-. Yes, Earth Dawn and Shadowrun do take place in the same setting. They're just on opposite sides of the rise and fall of a magic cycle. Negative says, I like this era of Fossa products. Yeah, me too. It was a great idea. Claude says, great magical item system in Earth Dawn to uncover all the layers of the items. Yeah, Claude. One of our top patrons, Donnie, just did like a super deep dive expose about Earth Dawn in our Discord. And he went into great detail about the magical item system because of how much he loved it and how it promoted adventure and all the other stuff. So pretty cool stuff. All right, I really don't know. All right, well, the next time we do this, the first thing we'll do is a bunch of 13th age stuff. GM Scott, I must apologize. All right, you want to see a blast from the past. All right, here we go. We have 2 copies of the 2nd edition Player's Handbook. This one with a sticker on it from Toys R Us for $15.99. How about that? So these, of course, are the 2nd edition player Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. Now, you know what? For whatever reason, 2nd edition D&D has not gotten the love in this old school Renaissance era. And I think that's because in many ways, 2nd edition D&D was just kind of a cleaned up version of 1st edition. And you know, this was my system because I didn't start playing D&D until probably 91, 92. And obviously 2nd edition D&D was out by then. Now the group I played with, my cousin, were kind of still using 1st edition rules into 2nd edition rules. But I mean, this was the book that I had. I mean, I think that I'm not going to show it, but I think this is Aaron's parents' phone number on a Post-it note that was put into my Player's Handbook after I met him on a bus stop in 7th grade. I don't know whose phone number that is, but it might be Aaron's. Obviously, this game has not aged well. THAC0 is very confusing. This is my favorite piece of art of all time, though. Maybe it's because it's from this book, but all I can tell you is that this, which is the name of this piece, is called Dragon Slayers and Proud of It. It is by Larry Elmore. And I have every intention of getting this as a very beautiful print. If I could buy the original and I could even come close to affording it, I would do it. But this is my favorite piece of art in all of D&D. This to me is like the pinnacle of D&D. Anyways, you know, it's got the weird blue boxes and it's got all these optional rules that they threw in, but it was like the beginning of kind of the end, right? Because 2nd edition D&D, you know, this is more in the DMG than the Player's Handbook, but like it took things that were essential to the way that D&D worked, like getting treasure for experience. Getting experience for treasure. And then it put them into a blue box and said, oh, they're optional. And you're like, okay, but then the game doesn't work anymore. And they just didn't realize that at the time. And so it was kind of a weird, wonky game. It's not really laid out particularly well. Some of the rules are needlessly complicated. Like there's 7 different systems of initiative in this book. And the worst part is, I know they're just doing it as an example, but in the example of combat, they use a different system of initiative every round of that combat. Yeah, anyways, this is what I always hated this, that when you tried to punch somebody, you had to randomly roll to see what kind of punch you threw. That didn't even make sense to me when I was a kid. Anyways, AD&D 2nd edition is fine. It's not fantastic. I give it a C. Again, it's what I grew up with, but let's call it what it is. It's not the best edition of D&D, but it is cool. And again, classic. And I love everything about the art.
Claude Corp tip $3. Got any Dragon Age books or Numenera books?
Claude just came in with a $3 tip asking about Dragon Age or Numenera. Sure. Since I can't find anything from 13th Age. Yeah, no, I meant like your parents' house, like your landline phone. So Numenera was our introduction to the Cypher system by, of course, one of my favorite designers, Monty Cook. Another game that I kickstarted. And apparently he signed it. I think he signed this at Gen Con. Use Every Effort by Monty Cook. Nice. No, this is the original Numenera, the first printing. Because that's when I would have gotten it. I'll be honest with you. I have not played this game. Obviously, I bought it. I kickstarted it. I've read it. I love a lot of what he does in this book. I love the way that you make characters. I love the glaive and the gosh, what are they called? The nano and the third type. I love 3 classes. Because I think this game has like the warrior, the expert. It has like the warrior, the expert, and the caster, which is exactly what I want to think. And I love the way that you use the description of your character, and then that gives you a mechanical ability. I think creating your character is one of the coolest things about this entire system. As for the system itself, using the DC doubling it and then having to roll under, I think it's fine. I think it's a cool system. It's easy, it's quick, it plays well.
Mighty Dave tipped $5. AD&D second is the best and Bjorn is a werebear. Stop the lies.
You're okay. You know what? I'll get Tolkien's dead, so we can't ask him if Bjorn is a werebear, but you know, it's unclear. AD&D second edition is best. The game is designed to play, and it's designed to be playable with low prep. And for that reason, I loved it. And the way that they use the Numenera as a cool way to give people cool powers, but not actually break their character, but still let them do something really cool, I think is really, really interesting. The game introduces some narrative concepts like GM intrusions, where, you know, I can give somebody experience points to create a problem for their character. This is clearly a game that is trying to be more narrative than I think a lot of people would be comfortable doing. I, on the other hand, really do like that in a system. I think it's a very, very interesting system. I have not read the revised version or just like the core Cypher game. So the only Cypher system I have read is this core Numenera. I have yet to get it to the table. That being said, I think it's a beautiful book put together by a great designer. I kind of don't really care about the 9th world or the 20th world or whatever it's called. I think it's called the 9th world. Yes, it's called the 9th world. The setting, I don't know. The weird, it's kind of Dying Earth-esque, but less so post-apocalyptic that it's almost not apocalyptic anymore, but it's also not advanced either. So it's like this weird in between, but then there's still like mile-high machines buried half in the ground. There's a really weird sort of vibe going on there that I think kind of misses me a little bit, but the Cypher system itself is still really locked in tight. Numenera is going to get a B+ from me. I think it's fine. Earth Dawn-ish, but like Earth Dawn is still very clearly fantasy. Like Numenera takes place like 25,000 years into the future, where like there's literally been 8 civilizations, one civilization that like completely developed matter replication, but then somehow that civilization petered out. So it's like it's like super advanced, super high tech, which is literally so high tech that, you know, kind of the Arthur C. Clarke, right? Any sufficiently advanced technology will appear as magic to people who are not as advanced. And that's kind of the theme of Numenera. It's like you're really just using all this super ancient technology, but people don't really know how to build it or use it or make it. So they kind of just have to wing it. And that's like, oh, that's kind of like you're a mage because you know how to utilize that weird tech. All right, well, it's 9 o'clock. We're going to go for a couple more, and then I'm going to put the timer up, and then we'll count down, and we'll see what it is. But right now we're at 275 for Stream for the Sea. So right now it looks like we're locked for Streaming for the Sea, but we're going to do a couple more, and then we'll see where we go. This is a new one that I just got. I've been reading it at night. Apocalypse Keys. This kickstarted and got shipped out pretty well. It actually got pretty nice. It's a Powered by the Apocalypse game, but it uses it's a new take on the Powered by the Apocalypse system that I've not seen yet. It uses different numbers because again, Powered by the Apocalypse is not a system; it's a concept. But it's published by Evil Hat. I think this is a new designer. I don't really particularly know them. This book is inspired by Hellboy. I pretty much knew that before I even got the book, but it very clearly says right in the beginning, it is inspired by Hellboy / League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. The idea of this is you are all like end-bringing monsters, but you're working for Team Good. And you're working for like some secret Men in Black style organization that's dedicated to trying to stop the coming apocalypse from happening. So, you know, again, literally Hellboy, right? You're these incredibly powerful, but ultimately kind of flawed creatures because you yourself are a monster or are evil, or maybe you're fated to bring about the apocalypse, but through chance or circumstance or life, you are working for Team Good Guys. So Apocalypse keys, you know, is very similar to a lot of Powered by the Apocalypse games. You have, you have a playbook which describes, you know, what moves you get, like the summoned, and you can choose, you know, your look and your origin and what's your prophecy. The difference of this game is you don't really have stats. Instead, what your character does is they accumulate these things called shadow points. And when you go to make a move, you can spend 0, 1, 2, or 3 of your shadow points. And that's what you're going to roll your 2d6 plus, you know, plus however many shadow points you spent. That's what your roll is. You acquire these shadow points by sort of giving in to your darker tendencies. So it's sort of a mechanical incentive to role play. But there's also this idea that if you get too many shadow points, then your character might be tempted or even potentially turn to sort of the dark or the evil side of their power. So it's like you could become more powerful by giving into your darker sides and building up these shadow points, which will allow you to be more successful at the moves that you're making in the game. But then the more shadow points you have, the more likely it is that you might turn from the light and you know, give into your monstrous nature. I'm sure it is a lot of fun. I enjoyed both the Hellboy movies. I have never read the comic books, but I enjoyed both the movies. I thought they were kind of a fun, you know, concept. And, you know, Men in Black, League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, Hellboy. It's a really cool game, and it's doing something different with, it's not just you get a couple stats and you're rolling 2d6 plus stat. It's doing a different thing. So it's a very, very, very cool idea. And the way that it integrates into it, it feels kind of like if Fate and Powered by the Apocalypse had a baby. So that's what I'm going to call Apocalypse Keys. It's the baby of Fate and Powered by the Apocalypse. So pretty cool. I mean, I'm really excited. Again, I've read through the book once, mostly. I don't think I've read the last chapter or two, but I haven't really digested it fully yet because it's pretty new. And I certainly haven't gotten to the table, but it's something that I think would be a lot of fun to play, especially if you had people who like that genre. So I'm going to tentatively give Apocalypse Keys like a B+ without ever really putting it through its paces. But I think there's a lot of potential there for some really cool play and some really good role playing because of the way you're incentivized. Remember, what gets rewarded gets repeated. All right, we're going to do 2 more. All right, GM Scott, I'm sorry. Wherever my 13th Age books are, they are buried underneath, apparently, every single book I own. So I cannot do a 13th Age one. All right. Expedition to Castle Ravenloft, an adventure for 3rd edition. Taking from, it, of course, was an update of the classic Ravenloft novel. Of the classic Ravenloft game. They did a series of these expeditions, which was sort of a remake of old adventures. They did an expedition to Castle Greyhawk. They did an expedition to Undermountain. They did an expedition to Castle Ravenloft. This was a new style of 3rd edition adventures, which came out right near the end of 3.5. The font here is very reminiscent of Tome of Battle. Awesome books. It's, you know, look, it's 3rd edition, okay? Count Strahd von Zarovich is like a 2.5, over 2 pages of stats blocks here just to run a vampire. But what was really cool about this adventure was, number one, it gave you kind of 3 ways to play it. One is as a long duration campaign, playing through levels 6 to 10, over the course of maybe 20 sessions, as you sort of explore the area around Barovia and you get to know all the factions, and you sort of eventually, you accumulate magical items, and then you go after, Strahd. The other way is sort of as like a 2 or 3 or 4 shot. And the game gives you some cool options for that. And then it also gives you options to run it as a 1 shot. That classic Halloween, let's run Strahd or let's run Ravenclaws. But what was really cool about this game is the encounters all had this format. It was a 2-page format. You'd have all your generic kind of encounters and areas and stuff like that. But whenever it was a combat encounter, it would have this awesome 2-page spread. It'd give you all the stats of the monsters. It would give you a tactical map. It would tell you about the zombies tactics, the carcass eaters tactics, the Deathlock tactics. There were lots of 4E elements in here. You could tell they were working on 4E when they made these, because there's a lot of fights that have, 2 or 3 different monsters that all clearly kind of are filling a different role. And so again, the zombie street encounter, the zombie ambush, zombies in the town square. This is sort of like the opening series of adventures. Then there's, the classic, exploring the stuff. And then you get into the castle itself. And, again, it still has that really cool combat 2-page spread. Everything that you need for this entire combat is right here on these 2 pages. And I just love that design. And of course the map, they give you, the isometric 3D map of the castle Ravenloft, because that's another classic thing from the adventure. So again, it's a beautifully done adventure. Dare I say, way better than the original. And the way that they talk about how Strahd appears to the PCs multiple times over the course of the adventure. Maybe he comes in his wolf form or his bat form, which is not going to be as powerful as when he's in his full spellcasting form. But, the party can kill him and he'll turn into mist and, maybe suck someone's blood and float away. And then he'll reform in his crypt because, he's just some wolf. But there's this really cool build up and tension to it. And the way that the party needs to sort of make deals and break through the allies. There's kind of a faction game here. I think it's a really, really cool system. All of these expedition system games were done really, really well. And again, the layout is just top notch. So I'm going to give Expedition to Castle Ravenloft also a very good, solid high B. Maybe B plus. I don't think it's an A, because it's not as classic, and it is kind of, it's Strahd, right? It's kind of a hacky thing. But it is very good, and I really do think it's really good. Ow. I just hit myself. Question, do you have a lot of PDF books too, or mostly physical ones? I would say the majority of my collection is physical, Claude, but I mean, I probably have at least 100 plus PDF books as well. I mean, certainly over the last couple of years when I wasn't going to Gen Con and Origins because of the pandemic and stuff like that. But I probably have a lot of PDFs as well. All right. What else do we got? Dark Archive, which came out for Pathfinder 2 as one of their latest books. The Book of a Million Margins. With these gigantic margins. Here's the deal with Dark Archive. I think the Thaumaturge is a fantastic class, and I really think the Psionic is actually kind of a cool class as well. I think they did a really great job with both of these classes. Thaumaturge and Psychic, or Psionic rather, are both really, really well done. Oh, this is Psychic. And they're interesting classes. There's a lot of weird design stuff here. The classes are fantastic. The rest of this book, I don't give a shit about. I don't care about the weird, Eric Mona secret societies and, pseudo-Nazi worshippers or whatever, and strange mirror universes and temporal anomalies. That's not something I want in my fantasy adventure game. I mean, I respect that the book is trying to do that, but the problem is, even within this kind of concept, I think that this book is done very badly, because the descriptions of these sections are like, it's full of like prose and like, it's like written in this weird third person language. And it's like, instead of giving you rules, it's like, oh, this is a letter that we found from someone who is stuck in time. And then there's just randomly mechanics thrown into the middle of all of this. Again, very strange. Lots of archetypes in this book, which obviously you saw in our archetype ranking books. Some of them were okay, actually, but a lot of them were not okay. But the classes are very, very solid. So I'm going to say, like, I would give this book a D, but the classes are really good. So I'm actually going to upgrade this book to a C on the basis that the classes are strong enough to kind of pull it out and just say it's a totally average book. But if all you really want is the classes, just get them off Archives of Nethys, and you could probably skip this book unless you really have some strange obsession with the occult and weird. Like if you want your Pathfinder 2 game to feel like an X-Files season, then this is the book to go to. But I don't even think it does that particularly well. I think it could do that better. So that's how I feel about it. But the classes are really, really good. Roll for comment. Holy crap, you're really hard on these books. I still can't believe you gave my book an A. You know what? Battle Zoo Bestiary. We'll finish this with this. For 5e, let's talk about this book. Number one, I love this spread. I love that they decided to go with this spread. It's such a great, you just don't see this anymore. And this was just such a refreshing thing for this book. It's got a great layout. The monsters are interesting. And for the most part, we thought that the 5th edition version of this book, which this particular one is the 5th edition version, might have even been better than the Pathfinder 2 one, because 5th edition needed more interesting monsters. And I should point out, by the way, I hate bestiaries, especially splat bestiaries. Like, I will always love me, ghoul, zombie, ghost, gnoll, orc, hydra, mimic, illithid, mind flayer, beholder, behir, dragon, right? Like, I love those. Troll, ogre, stone giant, frost giant, fire giant, hill giant, all the way down. Troll, again, I'll say it twice. So books that just introduce new monsters typically don't cut it for me. I'm just not interested in them unless there's a lot going on there. And there are, to be clear, like, this is one of the monsters that I actually gave an F to, because I go, what am I going to do with this thing? Okay. What am I going to do with this thing? Nothing. That being said, there are a lot of monsters in here, like, the Dredgenaught. And of course there's the weird bug monsters, which are really, really cool. And of course, my favorite, of course, in this book, and you guys already know what it is. You've got the Knotsman, which of course is a construct made of ropes. But if you didn't get enough ropes and you're like, you know what, my campaign, I need more. This rope construct is not enough. I also need a rope golem. And you know what my dream is? I want to use both of these in the same encounter. That's what I want. I want the rope golem and I want the Knotsman. Now the Knotsman got silver. The rope golem got copper. So apparently the rope golem can get shit on. So I love that the art is fairly similar. Obviously the Knotsman art looks, way more intense and cool, but like, it's just kind of crazy to me that like, that both of these monsters are in the book. We did use the cool bone dragon. That was true. I don't remember if it was actually just called the bone dragon. No, I don't think so. Anyways, I normally don't like these books, but I thought this was great. And they outsourced the design of the, oh, here they are. I think these are the monsters I really like. Yeah. I really like these things. These shale monsters. There's a whole like family of them. This felt so much like 4th edition that I just like loved it. And you know what? It won the grand prize. So like the thing that I like the most is also the thing that won the grand prize. So obviously there's some sort of an alignment there. This is a great bestiary. And the 5th edition version, I think, was sorely needed because the 5th edition monsters are somehow even worse. It presents well. I like the art, and it captured me. Are all the monsters winners? No. Does the book need 2 rope construct creatures? No. But they did do a really, really good job with this. And again, Smith gave this book an A. I probably give it like a B+. And again, I thought it was just done really, really well. And especially, I mean, obviously it had, it had some of the biggest names in the Pathfinder 2/gaming space that are kind of designing things. But I mean, for the 5th edition people, I mean, they did a good job converting it. But obviously, Mark did a great job, and so did Mr. Glicker. So, Zoo Bestiary, B+ from Derek. All right, we're gonna wrap up the stream here. I'm gonna go ahead and set the timer, because then when the timer ends, I'm gonna lock in the tips. Right now, I am gonna be streaming for the C, and God bless you. I'm okay with that. I love you all, and I want to be part of the fun. But did we end up using the monster crafting rules in the Quest for the Frozen Flame games? We kind of debated it, but we never really got to it as much. We had some fun with it. I did do some stuff, I think, for Thrawn, but we never used the official crafting rules just because I stole some of the enhancements, but I never really used it. I used some of the monster rules, and it gave them to the barbarian as he continued on his journey to becoming a Yeti monster. So, there's that. Bloody Condition 4E was awesome. 13th Age, ? John, I literally have spent like 10 minutes on air trying to find a 13th Age book, but I literally cannot find them. There's so many books behind me. I mean, it's still so many books. And I just don't know where they went. So like I said, when we come back, GM Scott I'll find the 13th Age books, and we'll start off with a nice big double 13th Age, triple 13th Age combo. Review the Stone Thief. I have that, and if I could find it, I would find it. Again, I literally don't know what happened to it. I keep looking around for it, like, oh, maybe I accidentally put it back on the shelf, but I don't know where it is. Oh, fuck. There's one. Okay. The 13th Age Bestiary. We just talked about bestiaries. We did find a 13th Age one. Okay, so the core 13th Age book has monsters in it, and it has a lot of the core monsters. The 13th Age Bestiary was a Kickstarter, and it adds, cooler, more monsters. Are they the weird, crazy monsters that you would expect to get from, like Bestiary 2 or Monster Manual 2? No. It's like basilisks and black dragons and bugbears and centaurs and drow and chuls and chimeras and genies and ghouls and golems and hags and frost giants and intellect devourers. It is full of it. Now, you might say, but it doesn't look like there's that many monsters. Right, because they give you like 5 to 6 different monsters of each type. Like if you want bugbears, we go to page 24. Boom. Here's information about a bugbear. Here are 3 different bugbear monsters. There's a bugbear scout, a bugbear schemer, and a barbarous bugbear. Guess what? The bugbear scout is a 2nd level troop. The bugbear schemer is a 3rd level leader, and the barbarous bugbear is a 4th level wrecker, because 13th Age is like 4th edition. This book is done beautifully well. They have cool information here about building battles. They have a lot of, this is the 13th Age stuff here, but they have a lot of stuff in here about nastier specials with all of these monster groups. They have a little section for each monster group on how to tie it into some of the icons that are in the game, if you're big into the icon play of 13th Age. The monsters have interesting, fun, cool abilities. Some of them seem crazy and broken, but that's because in 13th Age, they're okay with monsters having crazy, broken abilities. The only thing that's balanced on the monster to their level is their actual stats. What abilities they have, they don't factor into the balance of the game. And so there's some really, really fun and cool monsters in here. There's a whole section here on drow. And again, I love that, like, you open up this drow section And you're like, oh, cool. Here's a drow soldier, a spider mage, a sword maiden, a dark bolt, a spider sorceress, drow cavalry. Oh, here's a spider mount. That's not a drow, but it's in the drow section because it's more useful. Here's a bunch of information. You want to make your drow even nastier? Here, give them cruelty powers. Give them poisons, potions, and substances that they can use. Very, very well-designed bestiary. Rob Heinsohn did a great job with this. The original bestiary that comes in the core book, it's a little lackluster. This is a great pickup. If anything, I just wish there were more of them because again, they only cover maybe 20 different monster types in here. They give you 5 or 6 different monsters for each one, but there's only 20 different types. So they could have used more. All right. That was the 13th Age book. We still have to actually cover 13th Age itself. We've done 13 True Ways. I think now we've done 13th Age Bestiary. But we still need to do the actual 13th Age book itself. All right. So my fate has been decided at $275 to $201.01. Bestiary gets a B plus. I think it's a really great book. I wish it could have been a little bit longer. Maybe even an A minus, John. Yeah, somewhere. Maybe. You know what? I'm actually going to say A minus because it added something that the game system really needed because it doesn't have 5 other monster manuals or 5 other bestiaries. So I am going to give it a little bit of a nod because the system really benefits from having it, and it was a good add. And with a small press book system like 13th Age, you're not sure if you're ever going to get that book. They had to do a second Kickstarter just to get that book out. So it was kind of like a blessing to have it. So yeah, I'm going to say B plus, but I'm actually going to change it up to an A minus. Are your dogs curious about all the books on the floor? No, not really. One of my dogs did chew on my Torchbearer first edition book a long time ago, but other than that, they leave my books alone. And plus I keep the door to my office closed most of the time when I'm not in here. So yeah. Anyways, so at $275, the streams have it. So when I pack for my cruise, I am going to bring my laptop and I am going to bring at least a webcam and some sort of mic. And I am going to try as best as I can to stream. If that doesn't work, I can always try to stream from my phone. But we're going to try to do a nice, at least an hour long stream, preferably while I'm on the boat, because that would be the maximum level of ridiculousness. And so while my fellow cruise goers are drinking and having a great time and sitting by the poolside, I'm going to be here with you talking about role-playing games. And you know what? That's the real vacation. So thank you so much, everybody, for all that incredible support tonight. Let's see here. Zach says, I want to play this. I got to drag my players along somehow. That is always the rub, isn't it? Negative says, that's dedication, man. Hey, this channel is obviously a hobby for me. We make money, but we also spend a lot of money because that's what we do. I don't have to take a paycheck from this channel. And so I'm able to put it into back into the channel, which is really fantastic. That being said, I do it because I love it. It's a labor of love. These games are my life, and they've been a huge part of my life, and the most important relationships in my life have almost always revolved around role-playing games, or just games in general, but role-playing games in particular. And they've kept my friendships together through, 20, 30 years in some cases. And I think that they've just given me something that I just have always felt a strong bond for. So being able to have this platform and to connect with such amazing people, our patrons are just such, I'm more proud of the community that I've built. I don't even say I built it, but I participated in its creation. I'm way more proud of that than I am of anything that we've done on the channel, because I've put gamers together. I've opened up minds. I've introduced people to new concepts. People are playing new games. They're thinking about these games differently. They're having better time with the role-playing game hobby because of the community and because of this channel. That is such a huge, unbelievable win for me. I'm honored. I'm proud to be a part of it. So, yeah. Aaron says, do a stream about underwater or naval combat. No, we'll have to talk about that. I mean, that's just like a given, right? Like, how could you not? That's just such an obvious opportunity. KC says, congratulations, you just won seasickness. I don't get seasick, especially not on those boats. Those boats are so big. Unless like you're in the middle of like a storm, you can't even feel that the boat is moving. Mighty Dave says, I had a terrible time with 4th edition, but I love 13th Age. I wonder why. Mighty, we could go into that, but I think 13th Age is a lot more loose with its rules versus rulings. 13th Age has a lot of like, just roll a die and see what happens. It's a lot more loosey-goosey. 4th edition is a little bit more gamey, like Pathfinder 2, so maybe that's why. I know that there's parts of 13th Age that I really, really enjoy over 4th edition because I enjoy some of those more rulings instead of rules. Negative says, your love of RPG shows through, no surprises there. Yeah, well, it's sometimes it's a blessing and a curse. I will say this summer I'm slated to go to Origins and Gen Con. I haven't been to a Gen Con since 2019. And 2020 was the pandemic. 2021 was it was not the pandemic, but it was the pandemic, and I didn't want to go. And then we were going to go last year, but we couldn't get a hotel room, and I didn't want to spend $800 a night for one that was offered to me. And so I was like, okay, so I haven't been in 3 years, and Gen Con has changed a lot from when I've liked it. But the opportunity I'm going to get the chance to meet some fans of the show, some patrons at Gen Con and at Origins in Columbus, like I'm looking so forward to that. Like that's going to be so awesome. So, it's not just about the game itself, it's about the community. Rick says, I've gotten exposed to at least 3 new systems due to the channel. Sweet. Which ones, Rick? I'm curious. Because, you were playing some other games when you joined us. Obviously Traveler, but I'm curious what those exact 3 are. Boothby says, kind of bummed that I opted to go to Gen Con instead of Origins. Why bummed? Gen Con is going to be awesome, Boothby. It's the Disney World of gaming, It's the Disney World of gaming. That it might be overwhelming and it could be expensive, but it is the big one, Yeah, I bet everybody, most of our community members are, not everybody agrees with me about like my particular takes on a game or my takes on a rule setting, but everybody here that is especially people who are our patrons, people who are signed up for our channel, even just our dedicated subscribers who, come up to most of our shows. I think we can all agree that we all are passionate about these games and we really appreciate what they bring into our lives and to our loved ones' lives. So yeah, I would agree with you there. The 13th Age Humble Bundle is a no-brainer if you don't have that stuff because it's so cheap to get all of that. Do it. Just do it in a heartbeat. Rick, COC, Star Trek Adventures, and 7th Sea. Okay, so all Ben games. Star Trek Adventures is great, and 7th Sea is fantastic as well. I really like that rule set. Call of Cthulhu, I still need to find my way to grok into that. Maybe I'll just never will, John suggests I check out the Blood and Doom Kickstarter. All right, I'll check it out. KC confirming that the 13th Age Humble Bundle was great. Frostjack says, almost every single game I know because of KOLC. I literally paid money to Derek last week just to disagree with him. Yes, that is the mark. That is the mark of a true fan when they give me money to tell me I'm dumb. And you played Star Frontiers. That's old school. I'll have to ask about a toaster lady, but Star Frontiers is like, it's like Metamorphosis Alpha. Yeah, I just, again, horror is not, it's just not my thing. Like I like Dread as like a one-off on Halloween type thing, but like I'm like a one-shot only type person when it comes to the Halloweens. I'm not, I knew you were going to say something about Museum Masterminds 3rd edition, and I'm sorry, I will not go back on that. I do not like it. I can even actually say that. I don't like it. It's such a small, minor change, but I don't like it. I'd rather play 2nd edition all day, every day. All right. So 9:30, I'm going to get going here. I'm going to try to figure out the logistics. Specifically, Sunday, I'm leaving Cleveland early, flying to Miami, and then I'm getting on the boat middle of the day. We'll be in port, and then we'll leave. We're sailing to Key West. I'm going to be in Key West on Monday. And then Tuesday, we're going to be on the sea the whole day, what they call a sea day, as we steam towards Haiti. Wednesday will be a day on the beach in Haiti. Thursday will be another sea day as we steam back. And then Friday morning, I get off the boat, spend some time in Miami, and then hop on a plane and fly home. So Tuesdays and Thursdays, which are normal stream days, are also going to be the days that we're going to be out on sea, which might make them a great day to do a live stream, assuming we can, get a good enough internet package to actually do something. I've done FaceTime calls before from the sea, so in theory, I should be able to stream. We'll see. Do they still use steam engines? I think they're diesel, but, I think they use the term steam, right? But they're almost certainly diesel. They're probably the most toxic form of diesel that you could ever look. I'm not in any sort of denial of the fact that cruising is a very wasteful, environmentally unsound thing, but I don't know what to tell you. I'm not. I like it. So, anyways, Negative says thanks, Derek. Have a great cruise. KC says enjoy your GK vacation. What's the Friday night game of choice these days? Well, that's a great question, KC. We actually created Legend of the Five Rings characters. We spent several sessions building up a really cool house, noble house, a daimyo, and everyone was sworn to them for Legend of the Five Rings. And then schedules just went to shit. People got sick. People were in Disney. Bob went on a cruise. Then people got sick. Then I went to Vegas. Then more people got sick. Now I'm going on a cruise. But then when I get back, Aaron's going to Disney. Not a Disney cruise, but just Disney. And so our Friday games have been a nightmare trying to schedule. So we actually just last week and tomorrow started a backup game, which is Pathfinder 2. We're playing Abomination Vaults, which we originally started on not Roll20, but Foundry. We played through the first 4 levels. We're kind of like picking up where we left off. We're, kind of retconning a few things. Some people made some new characters. But we thought it was a lot of fun, and we kind of always lamented that we never got a chance to finish it. We just stopped playing because at the time I was doing Pathfinder 2 for the channel. I was already running a game and another game, and I kind of got Pathfinder 2 burned out. So, anyways, so that is what we've been doing, or that's kind of the plan now. So safe trip. Thank you, some random guy. Claude says, have a good one. George says, have a good trip. Lance says, I've been getting a lot of Mega Mech campaign games in on Fridays. Well, hopefully not further, Lance. I do. I've never gotten sick on any of these trips or cruises. So, I'm well vaccinated and try to take my health pretty cautiously. And, I'm a 6'1" guy, kind of big and burly. So, no one really messes with me. So it's all been good. All right, everybody. I'm going to call that a night. Thank you again, everybody, for the incredible support this week. I look forward. I'll be posting to the YouTube. I'll be posting to the Discord over the next couple of days before I leave. And of course, even when I'm on the boat, I'm going to have internet. I'm going to be sending pics to the Discord and talking with everybody. Let's make sure that we enjoy that, and we're going to figure out a stream from the sea. All right, everybody. Thanks a lot, and I will see you next time, possibly from the middle of the ocean, on Knights of Last Call. Take care, everybody.